Well, hello and welcome back to VCO Esports and the Esports Racing League. The Summer Cup started with fireworks 2 weeks ago as we headed to rFactor 2, broke out the Toyota Corolla British touring cars and went to Donington Park. It was a dramatic day, plenty of contact as one would expect, but the storylines seem to be somewhat similar. Team Redline domination in this Esports Racing League. We head back to familiar turf for them today as we head to iRacing, but we break out the Dallara IR18. We head to a track in America that you helped us decide. And while all of that remains the same, one thing's new here in the VCO Esports world. Luke Crane is not here to join the show, so instead, alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, we have Lewis McLeod, and a new face in the VCO Esports commentary booth, we have Ewan O'Leary. But I'll start with you, Lewis. I mean, we head to iRacing, we head to Road America, America's National Park of Speed, we head to the Dallara IR18. This is a combo that we saw in VCO Infinity. We know we're in for a treat.
Look, I mean, I know that we were talking about this before about, is this a classic combination? Obviously, it's not really been raced that much in real life, but I don't know. It's the vibe of this is just, it's so spot on. These cars work so well around this track. I think we're in for an evening of great racing, especially with how we've, slightly changed how the heats work. Anyone who was watching a couple of weeks ago noticed. I think they are going to be absolutely on it.
Juan, you've been watching on since the start of this year when we ran the Esports Racing World Cup for the very first time. What do you think about this new format? What do you think about the way that we pit teams up against one another?
Yeah, I really like it. Obviously, it's a really unique format to do it in this way. We obviously shortened those races just a little bit as well for this particular cup, so that does help. I felt like that was really useful actually throughout the Donington Park races. From the took the touring cars in RF2, so that was all good, and hopefully it's more of the same here. IndyCar Road America. Obviously, it's going to be so different. These cars are way faster. The track is way different, but the same great racing should remain.
Let's talk about this format then. We talk about how exciting it is. We talk about how it's changed since the Spring Cup. And Lewis, talk us through what we're in for here today as we work our way to the best of three final.
Yeah, so all the drivers will bring along all the teams rather will bring along three drivers. They split them up across each of the heats, so we'll see every single team out in each of the heats as they'll split their drivers across it. The lowest points goes through. You get 1 point for winning, 2 points for finishing second, 3 for third, etc. We move our way on into the quarterfinals. There is no second chance race anymore. Once we get into the quarterfinals, is a head-to-head there, and it will be all three drivers, each of the teams on the grid across the 6 teams. That'll be 18 drivers taking on each other. The top 3 from each of the quarterfinals move on to the semis, and it's all about the top 2 that move on into the finals. Last time it was R8G and Redline. Who is it going to be this week? I mean, I don't know about you, Arjuna. I'm feeling very much about Redline and Apex.
Apex Racing Team have drivers with experience in this car. It's been an Apex Racing Team affiliated driver that has won the iRacing Indianapolis 500 for the last 4 years. But Ewan, we talk about this track, we talk about passing opportunities at Road America.
Yeah, we certainly do. Turn 1 is a decent one with that slightly shorter braking zone, I guess, but really the action is going to be downhill towards turn number 5. It's such a tricky braking zone anyway, going downhill into that corner, but it's a great overtaking opportunity as well. And it sets up some really nice racing, some really nice side-by-side opportunities through the mid part of the course. And then things do get a little bit more tricky, obviously, before we get to the end of the lap. It's a great circuit for racing, and as Lewis said earlier, it's a track that you do relate to with IndyCar, certainly. We saw some great racing here with the VTO Infinity. I remember this kicked off VTO Infinity when we did that a few months ago, and that was a fantastic race to kick that off. So yeah, we've got high hopes. We'll put it that way.
One thing to note when it comes to this car in particular is that we'll have tire compound choices, but don't expect that to be vary too much. We also have push to pass, which drivers will get 10 usages of through the short, frenetic races to take full advantage of. But Lewis, this is going to be fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, this is one of the cars that's received a lot of love in the last, particularly the last couple of year or so. It's received an awful lot of love from the iRacing development and just from the community in general. You know all about that. It's a car that is super raceable, especially around a second like this. Obviously, the vote was between here and Kota. I think Kota would have provided some decent racing, but the race that we can see around here is going to be so much higher. Down to T1, into Canada corner as well. In this kind of car, those are proper overtaking opportunities, inside, outside. You can make all of it work.
Couple of minute hold before we get underway as the drivers just get themselves steeled for this race, qualifying already having been completed. But Ewan, as one of the newer members of our VCO team here today, the thing that we always talk about in this Esports Racing League is adaptability, and no more present, of course, is that than the fact that we go across platforms. But in all of the platforms, we have very different cars. We're going from a touring car, a front-wheel drive car in reality, to a open-wheel behemoth, and next time we go racing on Assetto Corsa, we'll go to the Porsche 992 Generation Cup car. That's equally as big a shift as the different challenges of the platforms that drivers are having to face.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, it's enough to switch from platform to platform. You don't often see drivers who are really at the very top end of multiple platforms. You do get it sometimes, but just to add to all of that, obviously we're choosing some wildly different cars as well, and it's both going to affect the racing that we're going to see, obviously, but it's also going to affect who's going to be up towards the front. I mean, Redline have been a pretty much constant so far, but those that maybe struggled in the touring cars, and particularly some teams really do struggle with RF2, and to get to grips with it, those teams will particularly like this particular event here tonight on iRacing, which may be to the liking of a lot more teams.
I think it's about time we head straight into the racing. The heats are coming up first. We'll see how the teams can take to it and who's going to be moving through into the quarters. I'm stepping aside, and of course, Arjuna and Ewan will take you through it.
It very well might be the best car that iRacing has to offer nowadays, this Dallara IR18, and this is how they'll line up for the first heat of round 2 of the ERL Summer Cup. It's the Frenchman Johan Hart, so close to winning at the Brickyard on so many occasions. He'll line up alongside Kazuki Umeshima, open wheel experience going back to the Grand Prix World Championship days. Manuel Largo in third alongside Moreno Surica for the Williams Esports team, Carbon Simsport, and Patrick Long Esports with Dylan Shrivens on loan from Urano will share row number 3. Chris Lullum has some work to do back in 7th, almost 6/10 off the pace. Lawrence Herzing for Koana Gaming alongside with PS Plus Competition, and Triton Racing making up the rest of the top 10. Colin Spork rolls from 11th for the Unicorns of Love, with Mirror Esports' Gergo Baldy alongside on the outside of row 6, Isaac Gilson, Martin Van Lozenor 13th and 14th. A big shock to see the Dutchman for RHG all the way down there on row 7. From 15th, we'll see the Legions of Racers Machine with Team Fordzilla alongside Butler Power Motorsports and Team Ballast Esports 17th and 18th, while behind them will be the Absolute Motorsports team with Sido Weiger alongside Bradley Brockles, Andre Martins, Lucas Whirl, rounding out the 23 cars that are ready to go here today. And one thing that I always note when we go to Road America, Ewan, is you start right before the final corner, not much time to get temperature into the tires, and then you climb up the hill to get your race underway.
Yeah, it's really not very long at all to get yourself ready, and we do often see a very long hold as well. It's an extremely long run to the start-finish line from the final corner, so we're going to have everybody very tightly packed up together going towards turn number 1. It can cause problems, but hopefully everybody does get through here nicely. It really isn't very long until we get this first race of the night underway, and it's good to get off to a very strong start, as Apex Racing Team particularly are going to hope to do here alongside Kazuki Umeshima with that Burst Esport car. Both of those sides looking to get off to a nice start.
Remember the change from the Spring Cup, just one driver per heat event. It's Johan Hart that looks to get the Apex Racing team off to the best possible start, as under the NTT bridge they go, green flag in hand. We're racing for round 2 of the Esports Racing League Summer Cup. Great launch from the Frenchman Johan Hart, clear of the rest of the field, side by side for second, as Kazuki Umeshima is swarmed by Olago down his inside. Sarika's playing tentative, has to watch out for the Carbon Simsport driver. 2 wide, 3 rows deep, they plunge down the hill into turn number 3.
A pretty early jump from Hart there to get a nice run over the rest of the field, which is really close and packed up together as we expected. Umeshima out wide through turn 3. He's going to get absolutely swamped here. There's so many cars just behind him. It almost looks like a NASCAR race at the moment, heading down towards turn 5.
Gravity works against you as you fall down the hill. Umeshima all the way down through the field. Sarika getting a little bit sideways will come into contact with the Koana Gaming Machine. 3 wide under the Corvette bridge. Absolute chaos to get this race underway, but it looks like all 23 cars still up and going.
That is good to see, but unfortunately a few have gone indeed wide at the turn 5 there. We said it was going to be one of those pinch points, but all the events at turn 3 on that lap made it all a lot worse, as we've got a car around. We've got more cars off at turn 7. Tizo Weiger has gone around for Brabham.
Not just him, I think Team Fordilla and Peter Pliska mixed up as well as on the exit of the carousel. I think that was Gergo Baldi in the Mirror Esports car, getting very wide. Here comes Isaac Gillison taking advantage through the kink. That is a very bold place to try and make a pass happen. Behind them, lurking in the shadows, is the Koana Gaming Machine. Down into Canada corner, off goes Moreno Sarica.
And he's got front wing damage as well there. You can see on the right hand side, he must have been in the back of someone going towards Canada corner there, and that is surely going to be Williams Esports pretty much out of this race from very, very early on. They're going to have to put in some strong performances through the second, through heats 2 and 3 to be able to advance.
I mentioned the push to pass left side of the screen. You can see the tower indicate when the drivers are using the 60 to 70 horsepower spurts that they'll get here at Road America. Gillison gets past Terzic. There goes Van Lozenoord as well down the inside of the zebra. The driver with so much open wheel experience now sees Baldi make it 3 wide on the run down to turn 3. They somehow survive. Baldi gets past Van Lozenoord.
Yeah, Van Lozenoord really had his head screwed on there, just made sure that they weren't 3 wide anymore going into turn 3, because it's really not very useful. However, he has lost a load of time, he's lost a load of momentum as well as they go on the next straight towards turn 5. He's now down to 13th position after such a strong start. He is getting overtaken by loads as it looks like all kinds of chaos.
Maulana around, Brockies, Hurzing, 3 cars all mixed up down at turn 5. The chaos of these heat races already starting to display just how dangerous they truly can be. Johan Harth 1.3 clear of Olago at the front of the field. Luchak up to 3rd for Carbon Simsport. Chris Lullen from 7th has jumped up to 4th. Very interesting start. Kazuki Umeshima from 2nd down to 6th. We'll see if that's a trend to watch out for. The car on the outside of the front row, unable to get launch like they would want.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if it was down to Umeshima maybe being a bit slow to react to the jump by Hart, or whether it is just the outside line. This is what happened down towards turn 5. It looked like Maulana was just very deep under brakes there and sliding his way in. I think he's got rear suspension damage there as well from the way that rear right was buckling there. So that looks like Legion of Racers down the order and probably pretty much out of this first heat of the night already. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure whether it is down to that outside line or Umeshima. The fact that he loses so much time early on, but 6th place for Burst G-Sport after the qualifying they had, not a particularly good race.
Umeshima coming under fire from Triton Simsport as well on the run down into turn 1, as Martins for Yassi will get in front of Van Lozenoord for 11th and 12th positions in the second grouping of cars. Chris Lullen, Dylan Shrivens, both on the push to pass as they work themselves down into turn 5. Short races here, that we know, looking like it's a 6-lap affair. 10-minute races will all depend on when exactly they come across the line. It has closed for the lead though, down under a second. Johan Huff not being allowed to stretch his legs.
No, he's just got the clean air obviously out front at the moment, but he's not exactly out of the water just yet, approaching half distance. So he does have to keep an eye on the mirrors and make sure everybody stays behind him, but for the moment he is certainly in control, and I do feel like these guys are a little bit behind in this very big battle for 2nd place. Surely the battles are going to kick off between them at some point throughout this one, and that is where we're really going to see Hart once again extend that lead to more than a second. So I wouldn't be very worried about that if I was part of Apex Racing team at the moment. His lead is more than enough at this stage.
The Apex Racing team just happy to be on familiar ground in iRacing with a car that they have plenty of experience with as well. Fixed setup's not going to mean they have so much of an advantage, but in-car tools are something to discuss. Front and rear anti-roll bar helps stiffen or tighten, or loosen up, I should say, both ends of the cars to get it dialed in to deliver the driving characteristics that you are looking for. Olago starting to feel the pressure. Umeshima goes defensive as they work their way up the hill once more. Halfway through this race, Olago sees all of the cars inside the top 10 on the push to pass. There's a look down the inside from Luchak, slides his way to 2nd.
Yeah, nice move really. It's a pretty simple one down in towards turn number 1, but not too much fight put up really, but you can be sure there's going to be a chance to respond here, maybe even down towards turn number 5. Chris Lullen's going to fancy his chances here as well in that 3rd place, or try and get that 3rd place. Here he goes inside line into turn 5, and he might just have this.
Here's a look on board with the Urano Esports Loney to Patrick Long Esports. Lullen will get on through. Look how close Dylan Shriven's got to the back of Olago, who goes defensive on the run up in towards turn 6. You get hung out to dry on the outside. Shriven's backs out of that one as we wind our way through this race. That fighting has enabled Johan Hart to build up the buffer. Now 1.7 seconds clear.
Yeah, it's exactly how I thought it might happen, actually. The battle for second really kicking off, and then Half just getting away further from the rest of the field in this race, and that's only going to continue, really. It's only going to get more fierce as we wind down. Umeshima, though, is starting to lose the back of this little group of 4 that's starting to form, really. He just doesn't look like he quite has the pace during the race, at least, as he did in qualifying.
See on the side of the tyres, all the drivers inside the top 7 electing to use the alternate red mark tyre. There goes Shrivens through Canada corner. Big old wibble of oversteer as he gets onto the power around the outside of Bill Mitchell. Ben signed, sealed and delivered. Shriven works his way forward.
Oh, he just about gets it done. Final corner really seals it, and now Olago is going to be under pressure from Umeshima and Noise as well, going up the hill and in towards turn number 1. There's going to be a loss of pace for Olago, of course, and here comes Umeshima, and Scrivens is going to give him the slipstream.
Fight back from the Burst Esports driver back into the top 5. Race control, 3 penalty points to BS Competition and to Alan Turgic, who runs in 9th for the time being. We'll track that, though, as we work our way through the remainder of these heats. You can again see just how active drivers are using the push to pass, and it's the great equalizer. You can use it to pass, you can use it to defend as well. How do you ration out the 10 usages that you get through the course of today's race? On board with Triton Racing down the hill. Won't look to get it done just yet.
Not just for the moment. We go on board, and actually done a very good job here to get back involved with this group battling. Well, they were battling for seconds. Now it's going to be 4th place for them, really, but it's done a good job to get back involved for Triton, who didn't have a fantastic run out in the first round of the season, and so we're going to try and maybe make amends for that. But top 14, of course, go through into the quarterfinals, so it's not exactly the pressure, not exactly on too much at this stage, especially in Heat 1, but they will want every point they can get.
Remember, we're also fighting for some small prize money here today. $2,500 to be paid out for today's results, or building up to our Masters, where $10,000 will be paid out as we focus back on rFactor 2 in the middle of August. Run to Canada corner, not closing just yet as we wind our way into the closing stages of this race. Do believe we're going to have one more lap to go as Johan Harth comes through the final corner.
Yeah, will be 1 lap to go when we go over the line here. It's been a pretty easy drive all in all for Johan Hart in the end, and he's going to win this race by the looks of things, as long as he stays trouble-free throughout this final lap. But who finishes in the rest of the positions is really anybody's guess at this stage. It's all very close, and there's even a hint of side-by-side for second place, but nothing doing. Chris Lullum deciding to stay behind for now.
4 miles left to go here at Road America in heat number 1. Lullum qualified down in 7th, has worked his way up into 3rd. Again, Team Redline seem to just have found that momentum that they need. No matter what car, no matter what platform they're on, they seem to have speed. Lullum on the push to pass will go to the outside. Carbon Simsport don't have the advantage of the horsepower on the run down into the braking zone. They'll slam the door shut. Still a long way to go, though. Lullum lurking in the rearview mirror.
He is lurking, but he's running out of corners to really make this move at this stage. That Canada corner's probably the best and probably the only chance he's really going to have from here. Good defending from Lutzak down into turn 5 on that occasion, though, should seal him that second place. But watch out for Dylan Scrivens there in 4th place. He's shown some promising pace, especially for at the back end of this one. For Patrick Long Esports, of course, as you mentioned a minute ago, not a full-time driver for them, just on loan from Urano for tonight. Putting in a solid first heat for them, and we'll see how far they can go.
You note left side of the screen, Luchak, no push to pass. He burned through them all the way up to the race. Didn't leave himself with anything to defend. He'll have to go aggressive to shut the inside as Lullum will sling it down through Canada corner, side by side, through the final couple of turns they go. Johan Harth, 3.5 seconds clear. Luchak slams it shut through Bill Mitchell Ben in that battle for second. Johan Harth will claim victory number 1 here on iRacing, the Dallara IR18 and America's National Park of Speed. Luchak, Lullum, Shrivens, and Umeshima, the rest of the top 5.
Very nearly a photo finish there for third place as well, but Chris Lund's going to hang on. A great fight between those three towards the line as well. Great entertainment for them, but unfortunately no positions in the case of Chris Lulham, and so they do finish in the positions they started as the rest of the field come across the line, burning their final push to pass as they go over. Yeah, not exactly too much in terms of change, especially at the front of the field, and maybe not as much chaos as you might expect. However, a decent race to kick off the night nevertheless.
Does tend to get, well, more caution-filled as we work through the night. So if you like chaos, if you like carnage, don't worry. We have plenty of that coming up for you. Big losers today, Koana Gaming in the 32. Lorenz Herzing down 10 positions. Moreno Sarica lost 15 positions, came across the line without a front wing. Here's a look at your race results. Johan Nath 3.6 clear for the Apex Racing team. Luchak, an impressive drive up into second for him. Carbon SimSport starting off the night very, very impressively. Chris Lulham makes it a Redline car on the podium as you get a valuable podium on the board in the most valuable driver standings. Dylan Strivens, Kazuki Umashima for Patrick Long Esports, and Burst Esports complete the top 5. Aspar Esports Triton for Lotche BS Plus competition, and an impressive drive from Yas Heat and Andre Martins to work himself up into the top 10. With Van Lozenoord disappointingly down in 11th, maybe expected a little bit more from him. Gergo Baldi, Stefan Schlacker, Ballast Esports, the Absolute Motorsports car, Arnage, Unicorns of Love, Koana, Williams, and Brabham, the top 20. Colin Spork will be slightly frustrated down the field there. E-Team Brit, Legions of Racers, and Team Fordzilla make up the 23 cars that started this race. Legions of Racers and Team Fordzilla not making it to the checkered flag. So heat number 1 is done here tonight. We'll bring back in our friend Lewis McLeod to talk about all the action that we just saw.
Oh, friend. Oh, nice. Thanks, mate. Obviously, I think major talking points in that race. Johan Nath looked really, really strong. But the actual thing that I would touch on was that I thought, first saw the qualifying list, I was like, where's Redline? What's happened? Chris Lulham did a great job to get back up onto the podium. And I've got to say, Burst looking a little bit faster there than expected. I know that Umashima is their main driver on the iRacing side of things, but that's still a very, very impressive qualifying. Shame we didn't get the race result to go with it, but still, top 5 is pretty strong.
Kazuki Umashima races in a rig that looks like it hasn't changed since his World Championship days almost a full decade ago. I mean, Ewan, from your perspective, a little bit of drama down the hill at turn 5, but it was a good clean start, which is what we want to see. Umashima did very much get swarmed. The pole position winner has control of the field coming to the green flag.
Yeah, I mean, it was maybe a little bit cleaner, arguably, that race than you might expect, the first race of the night, but it's good to get off to a start in that fashion. A couple of surprises in there, I suppose, as well. Carbon SimSport getting second is maybe a little bit better than they would have hoped for, expected. Aspar in the top 10, as well as Triton as well. A few surprises in there, but for the most part, it was running pretty much to script. I guess another talking point of those who didn't quite do as well as they maybe should have done is Williams Esports. They've got a lot of work to do now in the second and third heats, but of course you do get to miss one in terms of your score for the heats, so that will help them out in terms of qualifying for the quarterfinals.
But the struggle for them, Lewis, is the fact that it was Moreno Sarica with the disappointing result here in this first heat of the evening. You got Jack Heathley, you got Michael Romanidis as the other 2 drivers for Williams, but Sarica, well, championship competitor here on iRacing, that would have been their main attraction in terms of getting points on the board here today.
Yeah, there are a couple of teams a bit like that, and yeah, this is not me trying to be a bit too harsh or throw any shade towards RHG. Obviously, with the runners-up on the previous platform on rFactor 2 to open up the season, but Martin van Lozenoord, arguably their strongest driver on the platform, didn't look insanely strong in this race. And it's kind of like, it's one of those things where we had this a couple of weeks ago. We were like, oh, this is a really strong heat, but the next heat is just as strong, and the heat after that is just as strong. It's not. It's the beauty of this kind of format is that they're all incredibly strong. So Martin van Lozenoord kind of struggling towards the back end of the top 10 makes me feel that RHG might not have a great day, and Williams can maybe bounce back from it, but it's going to be tricky. Of course, they just need to get into the top 12 now to get moved into the quarters.
Do remember that, of course, we take the top 12 of the overall ERL Summer Cup standings once we've visited all 3 platforms for our ERL Masters on rFactor 2 with that unique one-on-one format that we saw on Assetto Corsa earlier this year. That, of course, saw the Unicorns of Love walk away your ERL Spring Cup champions. Still waiting for that final word from Race Control as to whether there was more other than the 3 penalty points that we saw for BS Plus competition in heat number 1. I'm sure there was many other things that they're going to have to look at as well. But Ewan, in formats like this where the racing is so frenetic back to back, there's really no time to breathe, whether you're a driver, a commentator, or race control. Having that live intervention is always important, and we enjoy the way that we do it without drive-through penalties or something. We do it with these penalty points to de-incentivize the contact.
Yeah, it's supposed to anyway. The penalty points. So BS competition with a little bit of work to do there, but in terms of qualifying for the quarterfinals, still one of those teams you'd expect to make it through here tonight. But we'll see. Of course, Alan Terzic is not a bad driver whatsoever, especially in one of these open wheelers. So to lose him or lose a good result from him is maybe a little bit damaging for them, but they should still be absolutely fine. But you're absolutely right. It does definitely what's the word? Disencourage. That's not a word, but you know what I mean.
It helps. I made that one up too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
sorry, we'll make up English. That's fine.
We'll keep making up words. It certainly encourages clean racing, which is a good thing. Obviously, we did have a bit of contact in that race there, but what do you expect when you get so many competitive drivers gunning for all of those positions down into the tight corners like turn 5, for example? It's going to happen. It's unavoidable, no matter what we do. So, it's the best way to do it.
So we're here at Road America. There's no other thing to do than to dive into a highly controversial topic, which is the other track that we put up for voting here today. I'm going to make that swift left turn and dive away from the corner number conversation. Let's talk about the Circuit of the America, Lewis, because if you ask me, one of the most underrated and maybe harshly hated tracks that we have across of global motorsports.
I mean, look, COTA is for me. I've liked it since it started in since it was built in 2012. I've actually always enjoyed it, and it's a fun little track. It's not where we're racing today, though. It is, of course, Road America. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on, I'm sure. But again, lads, you've got to take it away because we've got another heat to deal with.
Strike one went to the Apex Racing team. Can Redline bounce back? Can Apex carry that momentum forward? Peter Berryman, an iRacing world champion, has decided to pick up where Hearth left off with a 143.776, netting the Apex Racing team pole position for heat number 2. Dominic Hoffman, one of the new recruits for Veloce, will line up alongside with his lap time just under a tenth of a second back. Jeffrey Rietveld will start where Chris Lellum finished in 3rd. Jersey Glack for Triton Racing down in 4th. Michael Romanidis for Williams Esports will share row 3 with BS Competition's Gregor Schill, while rolling from 7th will be the Australian Jake Burden. Tobias Pfeffer in 8th, a better qualifying performance for the Unicorns of Love in this second heat of the night. Yuri Toman up in 9th with Mike Wagner through the top 10. Benedict Hitz and Jonathan Alvarez, 11th and 12th, for 2 cars that look to have some good speed in Heat 1. Jurne Simoncic for Burst Esports will line up alongside Luca D'Amelio of the Patrick Long Esports team. Row 8 sees Arnage Competition and Team Balish Esports, while the Absolute Motorsports Acilis Sim Racing team rolls from 17th with Milos Wergricki. A lot more work to do for him for that Carbon Simsport entry. Mirror Esports and Brabham through the top 20 with Legions of Racers and E-Team Brit behind them. Then we get to the cars with no lap time on the board. GTWR Esports Virtual Drivers by TX3. In what is a slightly bigger field, we also have the Jean Lacey Esports Academy and Mattia Krupi, 25 cars getting ready to go for this one. And if the pace in heat number 1 was any sort of an indication, well, Ewan, heat number 2, Peter Berryman is the man to watch.
He is, and he's also part of Apex Racing Team. We saw how good they were throughout the first part of that one with Johan Hearth taking that first victory in the first heat. You can be sure they're probably going to be qualified by the end of this heat, to be quite honest. Peter Berryman is in a fantastic position, of course, with the talent that he has to basically qualify this car straight away. Veloce just alongside. Of course, Veloce don't believe took part in the RF2 race a couple of weeks ago, so they do have a bit of work to do in terms of the Summer Cup and in terms of the overall ERWC business as well. So they'll be looking to perform well, and we didn't really see them throughout the first race as well. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do from the outside.
Joshua Chin is on content duties for today's race, so check out the VCO social media. But the 2018 iRacing Indianapolis 500 winner has questioned some of the wisdom of drivers electing to use the primary tires in these short 6-lap races. Peter Berryman doesn't even wait to get this race underway. He too sees absolute chaos straight across the start-finish line. Fordzilla mixed up with RAG, who gets absolutely arc-braked by the E-Team Brit machine. I think Koana Gaming, the other car involved in that one. A lot more drama in the mid-pack. It's nice and clean at the front. Apex from Veloce from Redline.
Yeah, all the teams you'd expect to be there, really, or most of the teams anyway you'd expect to be there, have now broken away for the field almost immediately. But I think a couple of cars got connected as they all dove for the slipstream on the inside line there. The wall obviously sticks out a little bit and you can get shunted into there very, very easily. And it's all gone across the road and there's been absolute carnage straight away. So unfortunate for everybody there, but up the front of this field, it's been a very clean start indeed, with Berryman taking the lead and Hoffman holding on to second ahead of Jeffrey Rietveld, which is a good job from him really, because we saw how disadvantageous the outside line was first time around.
Oh, still more wrecking through the hurry downs. Oh. Now who was that? Ballast Esport, but who is stopped and stationary behind them? Mirror, I think 3 more cars, Absolute Motorsports as well, and I'll correct myself, the initial incident did not have a Koana Gaming car involved. It was Tobias Pfeffer in the Unicorns of Love Delara IR18, so big drama to start this race off. We said they'd get a little bit more intense. We said they would get a little bit more hectic. Here's the onboard with Gregor Schill. He works on the back of Michael Romanidis.
Yeah, arguably an ACC specialist, but doing pretty decently well for BS Competition at the moment, and they do need these points due to the 3 penalty points that they got through the last race, but this is a solid position for them to be in. By the way, the Unicorns of Love were also another one of those cars that got caught up with Yuri Toman of RAG. That team now with a lot of work to do throughout the third heat, and it will be an absolute shock to see them not qualify for the quarterfinals. So we'll see what happens as we look back from the Team Redline car of Jeffrey Rietveld. Unfortunately for them, they're able to hold on to third place into turn 1.
Jersey Black trying to back up the performance from Triton Racing inside of the top 10 in heat number 1. Down through turn 3, they sweep once more. Berryman not being allowed to break away to the same extent as his teammate Johan Hart was able to do in heat number 1. He's already burned through 3 of the 10 push-to passes. Dominic Hoffman behind him, not being so frivolous, at least for the time being. Down through turn 5 they go, on board with that car, the Triton Racing car in P4.
Triton Racing have really performed well early on in this race. I mentioned a 7th place from their first heat, but right now inside the top 5, which is fantastic for them, and they should be easily into the quarterfinals with this kind of performance. So yeah, I'm very impressed by them indeed, giving Redline a bit of a hard time right now.
Berryman again works with the push to pass to try and break away slightly further. Only 0.8 of a second though is the gap, and we saw what happened if you run out of push to pass at the end of this race. You can come under fire. To the outside will go Jersey Glack as he tries to work around Canada corner on Jeffrey Rietveld, side by side, swinging the rear end. Out they go. Glack still alongside through Bill Mitchell bed, and finally Rietveld compromises. He's got to watch Romanidis around his outside of the final corner.
Yeah, Romanidis probably should have just ducked in there and gone for the over and under onto this front straight to try and get the run there, but he had Gregor Schill behind him and he didn't want to risk opening the door for the BS Competition man to slide on by. So, and he's even having to defend even a little bit, possibly into turn number 1. There's Schill on the left-hand side, round the outside for 5th place. Can the BS Competition man make it? It looks like he might just, and he does, with a great move at turn 1.
But look at that, 6 penalty points for the Unicorns of Love. Wave goodbye of any sort of quarterfinal hope for the only team to have dethroned Team Redline in any of our platforms, whether it be in the Esports Racing League, whether it be in the Esports Racing World Cup. Romanidis has got to be careful, almost clips Schill on the run down into turn 5, was playing with fire there. This is a lot more hectic up at the front than it was in heat number 1. Behind Romanidis, you've got Burton, Hintz, Alvarez, who all want a piece of the action. And Jurne Simoncic, not really an iRacing driver, well, has really gotten up to speed quite impressively. He's running intent to the inside, goes Alvarez, slides on past.
Aspar, another team that are doing a great job early on in this race here to possibly get themselves into the quarterfinals. But you're absolutely right, Jone Simoncic's not his preferred platform whatsoever, but certainly his preferred car type, if you like. An open wheel absolute ace he is. 3 times Formula Sim Racing World Champion on rFactor 2, as I'm sure you all know by this point. But at the moment in deep water with iRacing, but a top 10 for Burst is absolutely where they need to be with Kazuki Mishima, his decent performance, solid enough performance in the first race.
It's okay. We can't butcher names as bad as Lewis McClay can, and I'm only doing this because he can't say anything right now. Manuel Sorica, I think that's what he dubbed Moreno Sorica during the VCO Pro Sim late in 2021. Throw Lewis straight under the bus. You can see inside of the top 11, only Alvarez electing not to use the push to pass as we go past the halfway point of this race. No moves forthcoming, at least further up in the field. They're battling down in 13th and 14th. Hakimi, Rashmat, and Wegricky all trying to get whatever points they can on the board. We tend to see that the number of points that you need coming into the quarterfinal likely to be about 25 or so. Now remember, the lower the position, the lower the points you get, which means low points equals good. Maybe counterintuitive to traditional motorsports fans, but that's the way to think about it. Burton under fire, Alvarez really on the charge.
Yeah, Alvarez trying to, he really is actually, just got inside the top 10 recently, and now he's challenging some real big names up front here. Yasheet just in front, then we've got Romanidis from Williams and Gregor Schill from BS Competition as well. So yeah, Alvarez really making moves at the moment, trying to on Burton, but Yasheet of course trying to pick up those points here tonight and get as far through the competition as possible to give themselves the chance of doing well in the Summer Cup. Didn't partake in the RF2 section of this championship on this occasion, so that will hurt them a little bit in the overall standings, but they'll still hope to make the top 12.
Berryman, gap between him and Hoffman, 0.4 of a second. So while Johan Hart was able to break away, the Dallara iRacing Grand Prix Series champion of 2021 is being held to account by Dominic Hoffman. They have broken away from Triton Racing in third. 2 laps to go, 8 miles left on the agenda for heat number 2. Does Dominic Hoffman have enough to work his way past Peter Berryman as across the line they go? Lap 5 underway.
Yeah, and it should be another lap in the lead for Peter Berryman here, unless something goes drastically wrong. Hoffman giving him a good challenge, and this time around the race leader, also Apex Racing Team, but they don't have as much pressure as they did this time in Heat 1. And Peter Berryman will be very thankful for that, but he can soak up this pressure anyway. Goes down towards turn 5 right now. Speaking of off the road for Jone Simoncic, he drops outside the top 10, but luckily only the Arnage car goes through. He might come under a bit of pressure from Brabham Esports now, who are bearing down on him, but it's only 1 place dropped.
Not the most costly of mistakes, and for the Apex Racing Team, if everyone holds station as they are right now, seal their pathway through to the quarterfinals, at least as it stands for the time being. How quickly things can change in motorsports, how quickly they change here in the Esports Racing League. Simoncic still about 1.3 clear of Hakimi in that Brabham Esports car behind, so Burst Esports should be able to hold on for the time being. Hoffman and Jersey Clack both on the push to pass as they exit out of the carousel, riding on board with Jake Burton, part of the Yasheet team. Usually seen in the V8 supercars, which we've run here before in the Esports Racing League and the World Cup. Very different is the Dallara IR18, and in front of Burton, Schill goes around the outside, opposite way around. Romanidis goes the long way around on Gregor Schill. That was easy as pie.
Well, yeah, but Schill made absolutely sure that Jake Burton was not going to be following him through, and right cut across the nose of the Yasheet car there. So it was aggressive, but still knew what he needed to do to stay in that 6th position. Romanidis is still going to come under fire here, though. He has got push to pass, and I wonder if Gregor Schill has used it up already, or he's saving something for later on in the lap, because he is not using any push to pass at the moment. Are we going to see Burton head down the inside through turn 1? We are not. He might well wait for turn 5, but he's also under pressure himself from Alvarez behind.
Can from Gregor Schill is out of push to pass, or as it is in this case, push to defend. Final time, they run down the back straightaway on the plunge down in towards turn 5. Berryman still clear of Dominic Hoffman, 3/10 the gap at the front. A lunge coming from Rietveld on the Triton Racing machine as well. On board with Jake Burden, long way around, down through turn 5. Again gets the door slammed shut on him. Rietveld unable to get through at that very same corner.
Yeah, nice defending once again up towards turn 6 there from Gregor Schill. Should see him finish in that 6th position now, unless we've got Burton with one more push to pass. Has he got one to use down towards Canada corner? Has Jeffrey Rietveld got one extra over that car in front at the moment of Glack? This is the battle for 3rd place. It's really been holding Rietveld back. You get the feeling just a little bit throughout this race. He might have had the pace to stick with the leaders had this car not been in front of him. It's not a great carousel for him, I'm afraid, so he's going to slip back and struggle to make this move.
Is there an opportunity for Dominic Hoffman on the push to pass to close on Peter Berryman as they work their way through the final corners of this race? Both drivers out of the push to pass. If there's a drag race, it will be draft assisted for the Veloce Esports machine that's running in 2nd. But now an iRacing World Champion, Peter Berryman, is full of confidence, and up the hill, a pop of the hand, victorious in Heat 2. Apex Racing Team, a statement of intent as they look to dethrone Team Redline here in the Esports Racing League, 2 of 2 in the first 2 heats of the night.
They all of a sudden look like very serious contenders for this event here tonight, as long as they get through the rounds nicely and really take it to Team Redline. Of course, we don't know who they're going to be lining up in the final. It almost seems like we're presuming Redline will make the final already, which of course some teams may well already have that mindset, but yeah, Apex Racing Team with a fantastic start here, and you can be sure there's almost no way that they will not qualify for this. Well, it pretty much is, but there's no way that they will not qualify for the quarterfinals now.
We're on their preferred platform, 2 very strong drivers in the specific car, and then lining up 3rd for the team will be Jamie Fluke, who might not have too much open wheel experience in the last 3, maybe 4 years. However, we know Jamie Fluke, one of the nicest people in all of sim racing, can find speed no matter what car you will put him in. We'll wait for Luke D'Amelio to be the final car across the line in the 2nd heat of the evening. This one a lot more chaotic, a lot more dramatic than the first one was. That is an understatement. Here's a look at the race results then for heat number 2. Only half a second split Peter Berryman from Dominic Hoffman, the Veloce Esports driver, pushing the Apex Racing Team all the way to the very end. Jersey Glack for Triton Racing backs up the performance from heat number 1 with a podium for him. Jeffrey Rietveld drops from 3rd to 4th, but solid points on the board for the dominant force in the Esports Racing League. Michael Romanidis with push to pass gets in front of Gregor Schill in the last couple of laps of the race. Jake Burden, in a very different sort of machine to what we usually see him in, comes in 7th for the Yassi team. Jonathan Alvarez for Aspar Esports down in 8th. Koana Gaming and Arnage complete the top 10, while behind them down in 11th, Jurne Simoncic slid off the road and lost 1 position, but still on a slightly uncomfortable platform for him. 11th is not the worst result. Mika Hikimi, Carbon Simsport Legions of Racers, and the virtual drivers by TX3 all behind them. Then a bit of separation to Ballast Esports, Patrick Long Esports, Team Fordzilla, and GTWR. Absolute Motorsports and Christian Bellini 1 lap down in 20th position, while behind them some of the victims of all the drama that we saw: Martin Buchan for E-Team Brit, Mirror Esports Unicorns of Love, and R8G. Yuri Toman has put a lot of pressure on the shoulders of Amir Hosseini for Roman Grosjean Esports. We'll bring back in Lewis McClade to talk about what's now up for grabs in heat number 3. Rite of passage to the quarterfinals, and already you look at that result, the tail end of those results, Lewis, you've got to start worrying if you're R8G.
Yeah, there's a couple of teams that are in a bad spot that we kind of would expect to be a lot higher up. The likes of Unicorns of Love, that issue for Tobias Pfeffer on the race start, and the largest penalty we've seen so far in the Summer Cup, 6 points. In my opinion, I know that, hey, they could even win this race. Their day is almost certainly done. There's no second chance race. It's now or never. So I think Unicorns of Love might be waving goodbye a lot earlier than we would expect from that squad. But let's focus on the positives. Let's focus on Apex and another win, an absolutely superb performance from them so far with those 2 victories, because of course it's the top 2 results of the 3 that you have across the 3 heats. They're already going through. They're in the prime position. Are they now the favourites for the day? We've only ever seen Redline and Unicorns of Love win in the Esports Racing League. Are we about to add a third team to that list?
You think back to the previous finals that we've had here on iRacing, Apex have pushed Redline hard in the past, but coming out of the gate swinging definitely have a leg up. I got a message from the king of the bricks, Brandon Trainer, who's taking full responsibility for coaching his boys quite well as he watches on in today's VCO Esports Racing League action. I mean, in your perspective, Ewan, that was big drama at the start of the race, one of the bigger incidents that we see now. We didn't see why Unicorns of Love got that big old penalty. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. That doesn't get me in trouble. When you look at some of those other names that are maybe in positions that we didn't expect them to be, someone like Team Fordzilla, for example, who do have very capable iRacing drivers, but because the focus of the Summer Cup is rFactor 2, maybe not having the performance they would have wanted here today.
Yeah, there's been a few teams, as you say, just underperforming a little bit, and some of it not obviously down to themselves either. That big incident, of course, has taken out a lot of cars, or did take out a lot of cars in the second heat there, and it's really disadvantaged a number of teams. So, you know, including RHG, of course, and Unicorns of Love, and you name it. But so, yeah, it's really caused a lot of stress for this final heat, and that's really the what you've got to think about for me when I obviously see this format. That's what I'm thinking about for Heat 3. Who do I select to put in that final heat? If we're in trouble, who is going to pull us out of trouble and get us into the quarterfinals if something goes wrong in the first two heats? That's really what you've got to be thinking about pre-race. It's too late for that now, of course, and that final driver has obviously got to deliver if you're one of those teams down below the cut line.
From your perspective, Lewis, I mean, when it comes to building the rosters, let's dive a little bit deeper into how it works for the teams here, right? You get 3 drivers per day, but you're allowed to pick 5 drivers over the course of each of the cups. It means that you can't have drivers that just specialize in each of the platforms. You've got to be a bit more adaptable. And for a lot of these teams, they've got big lineups to pick from. How do you go and how would you as a team manager go and find the best 5 drivers for each of these Summer Cups?
I mean, it's not easy because you obviously, again, this is the whole thing. You need to think about it way in advance. Thinking about it now is too late. You need to think about it months in advance, like before the start of the season. Obviously, it's why, take for example, Unicorns of Love, when they were targeting the Spring Cup. What did they bring? It's the ACC was the Spring Cup. So they brought 3 ACC specialists. So they would look strong in the Masters. So they would look strong on the ACC event. So they would look strong across the competition. And then rFactor 2 and iRacing sort of took the back foot. This Summer Cup is the rFactor 2 Cup, so you want to pick your rFactor 2 specialist, which means coming into a day like this, you've got a lot of teams kind of on the back foot. Kind of look at RHG. RHG's 3 drivers today: Martin van Loosnord, an iRacing specialist; Yuri Toman, an rFactor 2 specialist; Amir Hosseini, an ACC specialist. It's a bit of a mix with a lot of the teams, and it's so hard to pick. And I agree with you, and by the way, about the heats. You want to, I'd want to put our really good driver in the 3rd heat, just in case they need to pick up the pieces, because at least then you've got that final bullet in the gun for when you need it.
To some degree, you also have to be careful that you don't get yourself in any trouble with that 3rd driver. So you want someone fast, but someone with a reputation for staying out of trouble. And I apologize for smiling so widely. I'm reading along in our chat, so do let us know where you're watching from, who you're supporting. I saw Apex Racing Team's Ben Fuller with some meme-worthy content, that is for sure. For a lot of these team drivers that aren't racing you, and this is a good opportunity for especially the Apex Racing Team, right, where they're so focused on iRacing, to see what other platforms are like and to maybe explore if they want to experience them themselves a little bit more. I know Jamie Fluke has not enjoyed his rFactor time too much, at least at Zandvoort.
Yeah, I mean, everybody likes different things, especially in the sim racing world. People always get quite territorial about it, but yeah, I mean, it's a kind of rare opportunity outside of maybe these longer special events to really watch your team race when you're not really involved in anything. So it's a great opportunity for team members to obviously kind of support while not having to do anything at the same time. Obviously, they'll have different drivers specialising in different platforms, and they won't have every driver doing every race in the ERL. So yeah, it's kind of a rare opportunity for that. So we do get a little bit of inter-team conversations going on, and yeah, so it's all fun and games, but it's what this is all about.
Would be interesting for someone like Mitchie Hoyer, for example, who's got plenty of rFactor experience in their new Delara IR18, how he thinks that this compares to the rFactor 2 version of it. But Lewis, I think we're ready for some more racing action.
I think we are. It is the final of the 3 heats. This is us getting really into the competition now. Let's see who's going to be moving on into the quarterfinals. Arjuna and Ewan, take it away.
So 2 of 2 for the Apex Racing team. Will they make it 3 in a row? Well, Jamie Fluke has got something to say about that. Another pole position for the nicest man in all of sim racing. He'll line up alongside Ryan Barneveld for the BS competition team. About a tenth and a bit off the pace. Lucas Muller for Koana Gaming inside of Enzo Benito. Luke Crane's going to be very disappointed he's not here to see that man put on the outside of row 2. Dominic Flyer, Ross Woodford, Triton Racing, and Yassi, row number 3. Jimmy Antunes and Arnage Competition will line up inside of the Unicorns of Love car, while Veloci Esports and what is meant to be Williams Esports machine of Jack Keithley, 9th and 10th positions. Mitchy Hoyer and GTWR Esports, 11th and 12th. Good qualifying for that GTWR car with Rocket Simsport and Ferris Stanley inside of Carbon Simsport. Virtual drivers by TX3 alongside with the Absolute Motorsports, Andrea Dalla Valle machine. And while Alberto Garcia will line up in 17th, Robert Pound for the Patrick Long Esports team will be alongside him on row number 9. Zoltan Shuti, 19th for Mirror Esports, along with Team Ballas Esports. Just one more driver with a lap time on the board. It's Butler Pal Motorsports, Noah Massert, with James Armstrong, Sean Arnold, Luis Moreno. Lots of work for them to do, along with Michael Tyler. And R8G's Amir Hosseini, well, you might as well wave goodbye to R8G right now, Ewan.
Absolutely. That is a long, long way down. I was just calculating in my head, where do they ideally need to finish in terms of making this one? At the bare minimum, they have to be inside 18th position or better, but that's assuming that nobody else does better in this race, which is highly, highly unlikely. So once again, they've made their life very difficult. And for the finalists of 1 week ago, this is absolutely huge news. Really was not expecting that. I was really expecting these heats to go by nice and, maybe not nice and cleanly, but certainly with all the main contenders up there. I mean, things went fairly to script last time out, but this time around, I mean, it has all been thrown up in the air. R8G in the drop zone at the moment. GTWR maybe a little bit surprised. Unicorns of Love, for me especially, being 10 points adrift at this stage is a surprise. They've got a lot of work to do over the next 6 laps.
Now, does Jamie Fluke follow the Peter Berryman school of thought or the Johan Haas school of thought? How early is he going to go? A bit of a stack up already, further back, front wing going, flying, but up the hill we go. Jamie Fluke gets us underway for Heat 3 of the Summer Cup in the Esports Racing League. It's a great start from Enzo Benito, who looks to make it 3 wide on the run down to turn number 1. Ryan Barneveld tries to bully his way past on Jamie Fluke, still side by side for the race lead as they come down the hill on the run into turn 3. BS Competition take the lead of the race for the first time today. It's not an Apex team car at the front of the field.
Yeah, for the first time, and for the obviously third pole for them, but not as good a start as the other two for Jamie Fluke, and he's going to get overtaken here by Redline as well by the looks of things, but he's going to have a lot of late braking on the outside line. He's going to sweep around here, maybe try and get his nose in front, but he can't quite. Into turn 6, inside line once again for the Redline car. Is there going to be a bit of a squeeze on the exit? No, it's nice, clean racing between the two. They're still side by side through 7. It's a high-speed corner, but they make it through, and Jamie Fluke is under pressure again into turn 8. He's on the defensive even still.
They hurried through the hurry downs, plenty of drama back in the pack. About 7 cars have been taking the tow straight back to pit lane, and most crucially involved in that shenanigans, Amir Hosseini for R8G. Wave goodbye to Roman Grosjean Esports in the Summer Cup. On iRacing, they have really not enjoyed this first 3 races of the day. Here's a look at what happened down the hill at turn 5, and there had already been some shenanigans with the R8G car up. That's Valentin Barriere in the virtual driver's machine getting escorted wide. Mirror Esports, Butler Pal, and so many different cars all coming into some sort of trouble. It was clean at the front, it was chaos at the back.
Dear me, this is all very, very messy indeed, and you see no rear wing there either. Not much bodywork left back here, I'm afraid. So that was all a bit of a messy start. Maybe not as messy as the Heat 2, but certainly not good. And for some teams now, that will seal the end of their day, basically. Here, notably as well for R8G, officially going to be knocked out before the quarterfinal stage in the Heat stage. I don't know whether that's ever happened to R8G in the ERL.
For both Unicorns of Love and R8G, 2nd and 3rd in our overall Esports Racing League standings.
Wow.
This is about as disastrous a day as you could have realistically imagined to get. Barneveld leads the way. Remember, Jamie Fluke saw his teammates go perfect in Heat 1 and 2. He is very much just here to have some fun and stay out of trouble. He won't be bettering the points of those in front of, or rather his teammates that have already scored for Barneveld and Benito. There's at least something on the line. 7-10 splits those two up front. Ross Woodford, the Yes Heat machine, has got some work to do. Yes Heat so far today, though, have managed to get all of their cars, at least to the checkered flag, inside of the top 10.
Yeah, they have. The Z-Team Brit have not been able to do that, I'm afraid, and Michael Tyler's going to add his name to that list. Only 16 cars have yet to come into the pit lane and will not, hopefully, throughout this race. So it's been a very, very messy start indeed for quite a lot of these teams. There is Masters Marnek. It's not over for Unicorns of Love, who, as you say there, have never been knocked out throughout the heat stage in the ERL. Now they've got a real chance here to maybe pull themselves and maybe do the impossible here with this one. They came into this race with a 10-point disadvantage, 10 points behind Ballas Esports, who were the final team set to go into the quarterfinals. It looks like, well, I say it looks like, is Marnek doing enough as Luis Moreno makes his way back to the pit lane?
I think still struggling from the initial damage that he got through the contact. Dominic Blyer will make it look nice and easy through turn 1. High speed, high reward when you get it right. Blyer now 1.3 back from Jamie Fluke as he's up into 4th with Woodford behind. Koana Gaming's Lucas Muller involved as well with that Unicorns of Love car that is basically out of it as it stands right now. Came into this race with way too many points. You'd have to think 46 compared to 30 for Ballas Esports, and yes, he might lose another one. There goes Muller down the inside. 2 positions lost in about half a lap span.
Well, he's not going to give up the inside into 6. There's always a sketchy one over the hill there, but they do give each other space, and it's perfect for Mlynek, who's going to watch on from behind and maybe get involved here. As Woodford goes wide in the Assetto car, is the Unicorns of Love car going to send itself down the inside? But no, not for now. We're nearly halfway in this race. I reckon Mlynek is going to need every single point he can possibly get, so these 2 positions could turn out to be very, very important.
Jack Keithley in the Williams Esports entry has come at, well, a foul of some sort of shenanigans. You can see through the carousel. That is a weird place to be around, especially losing the front right, portion of your wing. Benito all over the back end of Ryan Barneveld. Both drivers 4 push-to-passes left to use here today. As we come into those final 3 laps of the race, they have been judicious with their use so far. They're going to be a little bit more concerned and reserved about it over the course of the next 3 laps, because once you're out of it, you run out of cards to play. Benito, the snake forming like it's the Indianapolis 500, but they run into turn 1. BS Competition still leads.
Yeah, and the top 3 indeed getting away from the field, all of them having qualified for the next round of this event here tonight, if you like. But they're going to be racing over the race victory anyway. Barneveld versus Benito right now. Another push to pass being used there by Barneveld, and you could argue a bit of a waste of one really, because the Redline car here, you can see Benito not interested in using a push to pass down this straight towards turn 5. He's saving them up for later. Will Barneveld pay for that one later on in this race?
Luke Crane is missing the sight of Enzo Benito, putting the pressure on Zerai and Barneveld as they come down through the hurry downs once more, as close to flat as you dare, as the tires start to wear off. Through turn 7, nice and tidy they continue to be. Fluke still involved. Blyer's dropped back even further. You expect Jamie Fluke to be a quiet spectator from here on forward. Apex Racing team won't go 3 of 3 unless Benito and Barneveld get involved with one another. Push to pass illuminating for those 4th on back as Triton Racing try and hold off Muller and Woodford behind.
Yeah, let's see. It's still very close indeed. We haven't even got Blyer that far back, although he's probably too far adrift in a race of this length to do anything. Will these guys really go for it here? I mean, is that the E-Team Brick car still trying to get back? I think it might be. Yeah, these guys just trying to fight over the win for whatever it means. Doesn't mean too much in the course of this race overall, but they'll still want to fight for it. Nevertheless, they are racing drivers after all, and Enzo Benito uses the push to pass over the start finish line now, and will try and make this move round the outside of turn 1.
There's the difference in speed. Push to pass versus stock 600 horsepower. Benito flies on forward. Both drivers still have 2 push to passes left to play with. 2 laps to go. Down through turn 3, nice and tidy. Some lap traffic might play a factor. Jamie Fluke's not giving it up just yet.
Now he's deciding to go for it once again. Is Fluke, and so is Barneveld. You can see him there on the right-hand side of your screen. Outside line of turn 5, though, is going to be a long way round. He does seem strong under brakes down here, but not strong enough to make it all the way around there. He gets it even a little bit of a bubble on the exit as well. Has to defend. Almost a half defensive move, half attacking move there from Barneveld. He's stuck in the middle at the moment as there's about 1.5 laps to go.
The more they fight, the more fourth on back will close. The gap is shrinking. On board with Jamie Fluke inside the Apex Racing Team facility as through the carousel they sweep. Jamie Fluke dealing with plenty of dirty air, having to be very patient as he rolls himself back onto the throttle as they punch it out of the corner onto the push to pass is Jamie Fluke. All 3 drivers at the front of this pack now. Just one more usage of the push to pass left in this race. Jamie Fluke needs to take advantage and jump in front of Ryan Barneveld. Benito's going to block him off from getting to the lead. Barneveld holds on to second.
Yeah, and that's going to help Benito a little bit as well. Barneveld not able to use the best line through that Canada corner there. And so that will just give him that little bit of breathing space going on to this final lap. Meanwhile, behind, by the way, just want to mention Masius Marnik again for Unicorns of Love, because at the moment, I actually believe he is doing enough to vault straight into the quarterfinals from being 10 points back. He might just be doing enough.
It's very, very close, you know. It is very, very close. We'll keep you up to date as into turn 1, cones go flying. Barneveld still unable to get on through. This is where you'd expect drivers to get on the button. That final push to pass about to be burned as they try and hold on for that second half of the lap with just pure engine potential. There we go. The tower's lit up like a Christmas tree. All 3 drivers getting stalled out with the push to pass. Benito clear on the run down into turn 5. Barneveld's going to have a send. Backs out of that one. Benito locks up in response. Status quo remains. Jamie Fluke to the inside as they work into turn 6.
Very late on the brakes through 6, and he just about holds on to the car as well. It was trying to get away from him, but it's a long way around the outside through there as well. And so Barneveld is going to hold on, but surely that is enough now for Enzo Benito to take this win in Heat 3. He's just got that little bit of an advantage. He's just got that car length that he will hopefully use to keep BS Competition at arm's length here now and take that victory here in this race. But it's been a very, very close one between these 3 teams that will surely be fighting it out later on tonight.
Your Unicorns of Love update from Lewis McLeod. So if the math is wrong, you know who to blame. Unicorns of Love need 1 more position to overcome the gargantuan penalty that they have got. Milneck's out of push to pass, though. Doesn't look like he's going to scramble in front of Ross Woodford. But what an opening start to the evening it has been. 3 electric, 3 scintillating heat races. 2 went the way of the Apex Racing Team, but 1 will go the way of Enzo Benito, one of the most consistent performers in the VCO Esports Racing League. He'll conquer in heat number 3 and waltz with Team Redline straight to the quarterfinals.
Absolutely, those top 3 teams will be in absolutely fine. Will Unicorns of Love be making it or not, though? That's the big story in this one. They've never been knocked out at the heat stage before in the ERL, and they might be today. I do believe that both them and Ballas Esports are on 30 points due to that 6-point penalty for Unicorns of Love. But what decides who's going to be up there in that in that position and making it up into the into the quarterfinals? Is it the best result between the 2? Because Unicorns of Love would have that.
Well, we made that switch halfway through the Spring Cup where I believe the tiebreaker should be penalty points, which would indicate that Ballas Esports would secure a passage to the quarterfinals. Who knows? We'll let race control, we'll let our series organizers go through the weeds. Here's a look at the race results. 3 cars split by 0.8 of a second. Enzo Benito for Team Redline victorious. Ryan Barneveld, Jamie Fluke behind him. What a start to the evening for the Apex Racing Team. A true statement of intent here as they look to dethrone Team Redline from the top of the Esports Racing League. Dominic Blyer for Triton Racing should comfortably secure advancement to the quarterfinals for that outfit. Koana Gaming, Lucas Muller looking good too with Yas Heat. All cars inside the top 10. What a result for Woodford into 6th. Unicorns of Love, it's going to be close, so we'll find out your final results if they make it through or not. And Tunes for Arnage Competition behind them. Veloce Burst complete the top 10. Down in 11th position, we find the Carbon Simsport entry of Dominic Ploner. Sean Arnold for Team Fordzilla behind, while Williams' Jack Keithley dropped to 13th at the end of this race. Just one car left on the lead lap. It was Ferris Stanley in the Rocket Simsport entry. Valentin Barriere, Robert Pound, Noah Massert, Matthew Karuna, Luis Moreno, all one lap down, while James Armstrong, the first car, 2 laps down, while behind him, many more cars struggling. Absolute Motorsports, Team Balish Esports, E-Team Brit, as well as Mirror Esport. The most significant name, though, is Amir Hosseini, R8G. Well, never even getting out of the blocks here today. We know there's still some questions about the 14 teams that will advance. One question that we don't have to answer, Lewis McLeod, is R8G wave goodbye to us here before getting to the quarterfinals.
Which is just absolutely crazy to say goodbye to a team like that. But that's this racing. There's no second chance race anymore. It's something which, you know, we've undenied over the positives and the negatives for. I'm kind of for it. I'm kind of against it. I see it both ways. But doesn't matter. That is what it is. We don't have the second chance race. It has gone goodbye, and we say goodbye to a lot of these teams, including, and I do believe Unicorns of Love will be said goodbye to. That 6 penalty point incident, of course, that Tobias Pfeffer picked up in the second heat race, I think it's going to be too much to push them over the edge. Ballas Esports, who, like Ewan had said before, they're joint on 30 points. They're in 14th and 15th position, but I actually kind of think that Gianpietro Vinieri, who retired from the race pretty early, that might be a blessing in disguise, because it means that Ballas Esports can't really get a penalty rather, and so I think they'll be going through.
I did get confirmation that the tiebreaker is penalty points. We're going to step aside for a couple of moments. We're going to let race control resolve what lingering questions there are as the final heat race has come to a close. The quarterfinals on the other side here on VCO Esports. Well, hello and welcome back to VCO Esports and the Esports Racing League Summer Cup, where on iRacing, we're racing the Dallara IR18 around America's National Parco Speed. Quarterfinals, a few moments away. Race control still dotting the I's, crossing the T's on some of the shenanigans of heat number 3. But what we like to do in the meantime is look forward to the Fall Cup, where we're delighted to be able to talk to you about the cars that we'll be racing. Of course, you'll help us decide which tracks we go racing at on social media the 24 hours before every single one of our events. We'll start, of course, with our focus on iRacing in the Fall Cup, and we'll go to the Dallara Formula 4, the newest addition to the open wheel ranks on the iRacing platform. I know that's a car that Lewis McLeod, you've been enjoying recently in some of our RaceSpot TV Friday night primetime runnings.
Yeah, I mean, enjoying is a word. I didn't do too well on it, as I instantly got the message from Arjuna when I dropped it in the wall being haha lol. But it is a great car, so raceable. I think it's about 160 brake horsepower normally in these open wheels. Quite light, very easy to throw around. What we're going to see is big slipstream battles. I am so excited for the one-on-ones in this, because this is going to be a proper quality ding-dong.
And the good thing about this is it opens up the track selection. So we could go to somewhere like Scuba, we could go to somewhere like Spa. No matter which side of the equation we look at, we are looking at some very fun racing, that is for sure. Then we'll focus on our trip to, I believe this is rFactor 2, and the Stock Car 2018. This is a very technical sort of a beast, and you in one that the racing will be very different to what the Formula 4 has on display for us.
Yeah, it will be so different, and the driving will be so different as well. I've got to be honest, some people are going to hate that, to be honest. So we're looking forward to it, because when the drivers are uncomfortable, it does make for interesting racing and exciting racing. But some people, as I say, are going to hate that. But that makes it all the more exciting. The racing there is good, and yeah, it's a challenging car to just drive around on your own. So it will be a bigger challenge to indeed race at a likely maybe more technical place. Obviously, you decide where we're going to be going. But yeah, it's going to be a big challenge to both drive and race one of those cars.
Maybe we'll go to Castle Coombe, something like that, something fun. Then for Assetto Corsa Competizione, which will play host to round 2 of the Fall Cup, we'll break out a cup car, the BMW M2 CS Racing. Now, this is something that you and I have commentated on at other platforms, Lewis, but we know that very much like the Formula 4, it's about draft, it's about momentum, it's about staying as close to the rear end of the car in front of you as you can.
Yeah, it's, we typically associate ACC with being more so towards the GT3s and GT4s, but there are other other cars on the platform, including the M2 here, and it's about as close as you can get in a race car. It's kind of how we always used to describe it, as close as you can get in a race car to it being essentially just a road car. It's not got this massive downforce, this huge power. It's a little bit more tail happy to drive. You've got to throw it around a little bit more. You've got to really chuck it in almost like a slightly even slower touring car, and it's such a different dynamic than what quite a lot of drivers are used to. I think it'll be very entertaining.
3 cars that will be on display for the Fall Cup. We said we were going to shake things around, so expect us to shake it up once more. After the Fall Cup, it's all focused on the VCO Esports Racing World Cup, hopefully live in person in early 2023. We'll take the 12 best teams from this Esports Racing League, and we'll go at it in LAN style. That's going to be something we've been missing, these in-person live events, and there you are, your little preview of what the Fall Cup is all going to be about. Of course, it's going to be fascinating when we do those one-on-ones, like Lewis, you mentioned with that Dallara IR04, how it really plays out in that very unique situation that we only really have here, the Esports Racing League.
Yeah, it's something that, it's again, we've always said this before, it's a learning process where we're kind of adapting as we go. We've seen the one-on-one process being used in the Masters, of course, on ACC with the GT3s, but now we go, as in, obviously how it is basically from start to finish, where it's always one-on-ones, with the exception of that sort of second chance race where we see 6 teams take to it. We'll get to the Masters format another time, don't worry. But seeing the one-on-ones, I'm really excited for this season's one-on-ones. We're obviously taking the touring cars out, which, whilst the final 2 weeks ago was a little bit dramatic, shall we say. I thought the racing, the heat racing was so good. I really, really enjoyed it. The IRO4s next season will be great. This season, I don't know what to expect from them, but all I know is that we're always adapting, we're always changing, we're always trying to figure out our own little pathway through.
I'll remind you as well, there's plenty going on in the world of the VCO esports. Of course, now almost every day this week we have racing action thanks to the Precision Racing League, broadcast brought to you by RaceBot TV in partnership with VCO esports. So stay tuned on the VCO Twitch channel where you can catch all of that action, including the man sitting right next to me, Ewan O'Leary, commentating on several of those series. Plenty more in the works for later this year as well. We'll talk more about that when we get the opportunity to do so. So points are confirmed from Race Control. I'm taking a look at them right now, and the shocking thing is it wasn't just a tie between the Unicorns of Love and Balish Esports that we were talking about, but Lewis McClade, 4 teams were tied on 30 points. Team Fordzilla with the tiebreaker would advance to the quarterfinals.
Ouch, painfully tight, but that's that's the racing that we get. It is incredibly close out there. A lot of the teams are very, very good. I think the only thing that we could leave there with the absolute guarantee was that Apex Racing were going straight. I think I'd be a little bit disappointed, by the way, not to pick up the triple across the heats, but they are most certainly the favourites for this. Now that is a title which Redline have held for basically the entirety of the competition, with the exception of when we go racing on ACC and it heads to Unicorns of Love. How do Apex manage to handle the pressure of basically being the favourites, which coming into it they might have thought, well, it's definitely still Redline. After those heat races, no, it is 100% Apex.
Yeah, you look at the social media, I don't think Apex came into this thinking they were the favorites, but like you say, they very much are now. And Ewan, we'll talk about the format very quickly again. We've gone from 1 driver per team per heat to now all the drivers on the track at the very same time. So communication is going to be important, knowing the state of the race, how hard you can afford to push. We'll break out the 14 teams in the quarterfinals, though, to 2 different races. So it's not going to be as helter-skelter as it really could have been, but you still have, 21 cars maximum on the track? Should still be plenty chaotic.
Yeah, absolutely. We had about 25 roughly for the heats, and I suppose 21 is not that much less really. So it is still going to be a little bit similar to what we've just seen in those heats, but maybe with the obviously, as you say, their teammates out on the field, that is going to mean that there's a little bit of hostility there, just a little bit, especially when there are teammates coming across one another. That will change things, of course, but it's all about getting into that top 3, and it's very easy to miss out, to be honest. There's 7 teams obviously in each race, and less than half of them are going to make it through. Same goes for the semi-finals, which you'll see later on. So it's really unforgiving, this format, and I have to say I'm a big fan of getting rid of the second chance, because if you think about it, in my head, RHG and Unicorns of Love would have stormed through a second chance kind of thing, and we wouldn't have seen the drama of them getting knocked out in the heat. So while it's bad for them, of course, and bad for the big teams, if maybe you have a poor day, it's a bit more dramatic for us, and I'm a fan of that.
Do you remember all the teams that have missed out? They're still classified in the standings, and so the higher up in those standings for today they are, the more points they gain for the ERL Summer Cup, for the overall ERL. So there's still plenty to play for in these heats, even if you aren't looking at automatically transferring work. Confirm as well for you the teams in each of the quarterfinals. The first one coming up, we'll see the Apex Racing Team, Veloce, BS Competition, Koana Gaming, Aspar Esports Racing Team, Arnage Competition, and Patrick Long Esports. Quarterfinal number 2, we'll see Team Redline, Triton Racing, Carbon Sim Sport, Yas Heat, Burst Esports, Williams Esports, and Team Fordzilla. We'll get visual confirmation of that for you before we get underway for these races. And of course, I know I've just run through a list of names there for you, Lewis, but what stands out for you in terms of drivers and teams that you think are going to struggle? Because in terms of me, when I look at those 14 names, I think Williams Esports is one that I expected a little bit more from here today.
I'd agree. I think they're going to be into a little bit of a difficult. Let's take a look at those point standings, by the way, and see where things are going, so we can actually get a visualization on what's going on and confirmation to those. We'll be focusing on the 2 quarterfinals now. Those in the middle of shots. We're going to say goodbye to an awful lot of teams, including the likes of Unicorns of Love already. I don't know who's going to be looking strong in this, other than Apex. Veloce looked pretty strong. Team Adam looked strong. A couple of teams looked stronger than expected. BS Competition, I know, obviously, yes, Ryan Barneveld, fair enough. Alan Taylor just looked all right, did pick up a couple of penalty points, but Gregor Schill, who is an ACC specialist, as Ewan pointed out, super performance in his race. They could actually genuinely look very, very strong, and I also wouldn't count out the Patrick Long Esports team either.
So we have whittled down 27 to 14. The next 2 races will see them whittled down to the 6 that will fight it out in the semi-finals of this round 2 in the Esports Racing League Summer Cup. Qualifying is getting underway right now, and so what does that mean? It means this time I'm going to be taking a back seat. I'll be watching along with you through these quarterfinals. Let's talk in the chat. Let's see who we're rooting for, who's doing well. But for now, I'll hand it over to Lewis and Ewan to talk us through quarterfinal number 1.
Yes, indeed. All of the teams taking to the circuit, splitting up between their 2 quarterfinals. This one should be a lot of fun. We do get to see all 3 drivers of each respective team out there, so we can't see multiple different victories for Apex Racing team. They'll have to settle for just the one if they can make that one stick. 21 cars rather to take to the circuit. Ewan, it's not going to be as busy as the heats, at least from an on-track amount of cars, but it will be for the teams.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even convinced it will be that much less busy because there's still 20 drivers, and 7 teams, of course, in each heat. So I don't think it's exactly going to be that much less chaotic, really. What I do think, though, it's going to be a little bit different to what we saw in the touring cars. It was very much argy-bargy, kind of hands-on kind of racing, if you like, at the touring cars at Donington Park last time out. There was a lot of bumping and banging. Something you can't really get away with here in these cars, so it's going to be very, very different, and I'm just interested to see how are these guys going to execute those aggressive moves late on in these races when you can't lean on each other like you can, or you could, I should say, 2 weeks ago.
Well, here comes Peter Berryman out of the carousel. Again, to remind you of the teams that are in this quarterfinal. Apex Racing, we've got Veloce, BS Competition, Koana, Aspar, Arnage, and Patrick Long Esports. Those are the teams that will be taking part in this quarterfinal. You have to wait to the next one to see the likes of Redline taking on the rest of the contingent to see who's going to go through in that. And again, a reminder that just 3 teams will work their way through into the semi-finals. These will be 12-minute races as well, and you can see it's a long build-up here to get ready for what will be quite a tricky and pressure-filled lap.
Yeah, absolutely does not want to overheat the tyres by this time next lap, does Peter Berryman. But this is going to be quite a sight because there's going to be this is going to be quite a lap, I should say. Out the final corner, trying to get the best run possible onto this front straight now, and just thinking about that lap in front of you, trying to get the best possible because the margins are going to be so fine by the end of this. Towards turn number 1, trying to carry as much speed through here as possible without running too wide over towards the left-hand side here, because you are going to end up in the grass quite quickly. Berryman executes it nicely as we break downhill in towards turn 3. Don't clip your wheels on the grass on the left-hand side, and make sure once again you don't run too wide. This circuit has no room for error, grass lining the circuit everywhere as we run down towards turn 5.
Yeah, super lap from the opening couple of corners there from Peter Berryman thus far. They are tricky to do so. It gets you into the rhythm, though, all the way over to the right-hand side to give you that massive turn. You can use a lot of this curve on the outside of turn 5 up towards 6. In my opinion, the trickiest corner on the circuit. You come up over the crest, and it's so tricky to balance the car in, but then you keep it absolutely pinned through 7. Big deep breath there for Peter Berryman. Down the hill into turn 8, down the hurry downs, hooks it in there nicely, and then into the double apex 9 and 10 here of the carousel. Looking very clean, looking very tidy at the moment from Peter Berryman, and that's kind of it. I don't think you can afford to risk everything on a lap like this. You've got to kind of back off just a little bit, give yourself an extra couple of tenths leeway as you commit through the kink.
You can't leave it all out on the line, of course. It's not a long qualifying session, but you do still have to perform here. As I said earlier, only 3 teams make it. Ideally, you want 2 of your drivers inside the top 6 if possible, and Berryman is certainly going to be expected to be one of those for Apex Racing team, although they don't really have a weak link, and that does take a little bit of the pressure off of him as the first lap times start to come through. Veloce with some opening strong times there as Ryan Barneveld goes to the front. All of the times are going to come pretty much at once here as Peter Berryman makes his way over the line now. It should be enough for the top spot, although it is not. Brian Barneveld does just enough to get ahead of him, although his teammates have delivered with 43.5s.
Yeah, locking out the front row at the moment. Johan Half and Jamie Fluke last couple of times. Adam Pinsesh comes down into 15th position. Alvarez instantly beats him in one of the Aspar teams. Still up just outside of the top 10 as Lucas Vela crosses the line and goes to 18th position. So our Arnage competition, 10th, 16th and 18th throughout that session. But Apex Racing Team looking as strong as ever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I had to pick a heat that might be a little bit stronger than the other, or one that maybe you wouldn't expect which team is going to go forward, I would say that Apex Racing Team, Veloce and BS Competition certainly do look the strongest three teams in this quarterfinal. In the other one, it very much is up for grabs. I know Redline are there, but after that, it is a bit of a mess. So the top three teams certainly are very apparent as we go forward in the qualifying session at least.
Apex Racing Team will then start from first, second and fourth. Half and Fluke on the front row of the grid. Peter Berryman will have to line up alongside Brian Barneveld in third position. Dominic Hoffman, one of the recent recruits for Veloce, will start alongside Lucas Müller for Koana Gaming. Behind those, it'll be Alago, who was looking super strong in his heat, with Lorenz Herzing alongside. Sven Noller in 9th position and Jimmy Antunes rounding out the top 10 just ahead of Gregor Schill, who really impressed with BS Competition in his heat as well. Isaac Gillison will start from 12th for Veloce. Dylan Scrivens, 13th position. He really is the strongest iRacing driver for the Patrick Long Esports car, and being in 13th position will be a little bit of a disappointment. He'll start alongside his good friend Alan Terzic in 14th place. Alvarez, one of the last laps to put in that session, in 15th, before we meet the Arnage competition of Adam Pinsesh starting directly ahead of his teammate Lucas Vela. Luca D'Amelio splitting the two of them in 17th position. Robert Puan and Alberto Garcia will start 19th and 20th position after that qualifying session. Tight stuff indeed. Benedict Hitz is the driver that's missing from all of that. We're starting from 21st place, but a tight qualifying. Apex all the pressure, but they seem to have soaked it up plenty easily.
Yeah, absolutely. They're so strong in this car, track and sim combination, and it's great to see for them. They are favourites to go through here, certainly in quarterfinal one, along with Veloce and BS Competition. But let's not forget about Koana Gaming. They do have a car inside the top 6. Aspar have Alvarez as well, but does he have the team support to drag his side into the semi-finals? I'm not convinced.
Okay, so Apex going through. That's kind of the vibe that we're getting right now. Of course, it can go very, very wrong in very dramatic fashion. There is no second chance after this. Again, if you get knocked out here, you get knocked out. But who do you feel is joining them? Who have you got your eyes on? Because I'm not so sure myself. It's not an easy call.
No, I do think Veloce and BS Competition, judging by both the qualifying and quarterfinal as well, I do expect those guys to be going through as well. But as you said, racing's weird, and weird results can happen quite easily. A couple of the semi-final teams from last week, for example, I know it's touring car racing, which is even more weird, but still, there were a couple of teams there, like Patrick Long Esports, for example, and no disrespect to them, but we weren't expecting to see them in the semi-finals, and they made it, and they gave it a good shot in the semis. So, you know, who knows what will happen? Because, as I say, weird things can happen, and they already have here tonight.
I mean, so I kind of agree with you. BS Competition and Veloce would be the two that I'd be looking at. But look there on the right-hand side of shot. A couple of Koana Gaming cars. Do not rule them out. They have been almost like the underdogs, so to speak, from the, in my opinion, they were the ones that really, really impressed in the RF2 round one of the season. They could well impress here. We'll put 7 laps. Oh, there's already drama in the background. BS Competition, Veloce already having issues. And one of the Patrick Long Esports, there's already been drama out of the final corner. We'll have to catch up with that in a moment, because we're about to go racing here at Road America for the first of the quarterfinals here in the VCO Esports Racing League, as Apex Racing Team will lead our way from the front in the run down towards turn 1. Ryan Barneveld will already look to the inside, but it's going to be an Apex Racing Team 1, 2 and 3 around the outside. Not quite so much. Oh, that was super tight, and Veloce's obviously going to come through. Koana obviously going to come through as well. Veloce trying to find their way up the order, but at the moment still an Apex Racing 1-2.
BS Competition going to find themselves in trouble here, because one of their cars is certainly damaged and the other one's going 3 wide back in the pack right now. Veloce as well also going to struggle. You can see that car on the right hand side of shot just over there. The BS Competition car going slowly. Koana Gaming have gotten through that quite nicely, and they have got a couple of cars inside the top 8 or so. Have they got a chance here as another one of the cars goes off the road down towards that turn 5? Big slide by the BS Competition car. Think that was Barneveld, who was getting all out of show.
Yeah, Lorenz Herzing now's looking straight down the inside, trying to get past Sven Noller as well. I do believe that one is super tight stuff here. It might actually be Lucas Muller, rather. Sorry, let me just correct myself. Lucas Muller trying to get past Dominic Hoffman as they head into the carousel. Already a comfortable lead for the two Apex Racing Team cars of Johan Harf and Peter Berryman. It was then Jamie Fluke, who's lost out an awful lot of spots, went from 4th down to 9th on the very first lap as we head down towards Canada Corner.
Yeah, it's all single-filed and nicely out now, but where on earth are these cars in the order at this stage? It really is up in the air. ART obviously looking very strong at the front of the field, and we expected that, but behind, it's much coming more to what your prediction was, Lewis, which is absolute chaos and complete pandemonium in that fight for second and third.
First lap complete then, and Apex Racing Team very, very comfortable right now and already defending just to try and break the slip through with his teammate with Johan Harf there on the start-finish straight, heading back towards turn 1. First lap complete, Harf leads from Berryman. Bit of a look there in the background. That will be Olago, who was trying to find his way through. Let's take a look on the replays to what was happening. Gregor Schill lost it trying to come to the race start. He was trying to effectively jump the start and straight into the side of one of the Veloces.
Well, I don't think he was trying to jump the start. I just think he got on that curb on the grass on the right-hand side and for a ghost. I'm wondering the same thing, to be quite honest, but yeah, for whatever reason, he's found himself with damage now as well, by the way. Garcia and Pona are also in the pit lane, by the way, a little bit further down. So Gregor Schill has left it up to his teammates, Ryan Barneveld and Alan Terzic, to do the job for him right now. And I don't think they're going to make it as things stand, although it's a bit of a mathematician's nightmare at the minute. It's all over the place, and obviously still 5.5 laps to go for things to change.
We are looking for 3 teams to go through. Apex Racing Team, first and second. Again, remember how the points work. It is the position that you have. First and second for Apex Racing Team, so they have 3 points. We'll take a look on the replays. What happened to Rob Put on? Oh my goodness me. A massive moment as he just tried to get out of the car directly ahead whilst he got onto the brakes and went straight into the barrier. That would have been one of the Aspar cars, but that was absolutely crazy. Yes, first and second for Peter Berryman and Johan Harf, so that's 3 points for the Apex Racing Team. It's 3rd and 11th for Alan Terzic and Ryan Barneveld, so for BS Competition it's 14. Then I think it's Veloce 4th and 7th, it's 11 points. I think it's those 3 going through, but do not count out Koana Gaming, who are 5th and 9th at the moment with Muller and Herzing.
Also with 14, as well as BS Competition. However, BS would... well, let's see about penalties. Yeah, if we start factoring that in as well, we're really going to have trouble. So we'll hold off on that. But yeah, I mean, those two with tied in terms of positions at the moment. But for me, Koana are more likely to gain positions. They've got both of them. Well, I say that Muller's not really going to be able to get close to the top 4 unless they start to fight a little bit. He's got obviously they've got. Herzing in the pack a little bit, but he's got Jamie Fluke just in front of him, so that's going to be a very difficult overtake indeed. Alan Terzic has got a lot of cars just up in front of him there, the likes of Scrivens, Herzing, Fluke, Noller, for example, so he does have more scope to gain places, and Ryan Barneveld is giving the Apexes quite a rough time as well.
I was going to say that exactly, so we'll see if Ryan Barneveld can try and get past Peter Berryman. It needs to be a pretty big send, bit of a moment there, just trying to arrest the car coming down into T8, into the carousel once again for BS Competition. This is the thing, Apex Racing Team at the moment don't necessarily need to win. They've got 2 cars right up the order. They can afford to essentially lose a couple of positions and still manage to work their way through into the semi-finals. Ryan Barneveld needs to do a lot of work right now to find his way past. He needs to essentially win if BS Competition have any hopes of getting through. For me, I still think they might well receive a penalty for the instant there for Gregor Schill at the first, well, but essentially the very first corner of the race, even though technically it wasn't even that. The 0th corner of the race. I don't know how this one's going to go. BS Competition not in a comfortable spot.
No. And you're right. I mean, traditionally we have seen 3 penalty points given out for incidents and so on. So, you know, you're right. They probably do need to at least win this race. I think it's much more down to Alan Terzic. With all respect to those guys who are a little bit further down, those overtakes are going to be a little bit easier than the likes of Peter Berryman and Johan Harf, who are 1 and 2 at this stage. And Barneveld is going to struggle to get through on them, in my opinion. And of course, he's got pressure from Hoffman behind as well, which is not ideal. Whereas Terzic has got cars a little bit further down to possibly overtake. So I think it much more rests on him to be able to make these overtakes. Although if they both could, it would really help them out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you're right. Tezos has got more cars ahead of him that he can pass right now, including, again, his close friend in Dylan Scrivens. He's got to try and muscle his way past. But whether you're a friend or not of Alan Terzic, if you're on the table to be overtaken, you will be overtaken. So we'll have to see what the driver can do. The Slovenian driver in 11th position at the moment. It's still an Apex Racing 1-2 here at Road America. And we'll just see if Barneveld can get his way past. Dominic Hoffman's not trying to apply any pressure. For Veloce, with Hoffman in 4th, with Noller in 7th, they don't really need to do anything in the form of high pressure. 4th and 7th is okay. It's not great, but it is okay.
I think they'll be absolutely fine. I mean, can you see both BS and Koana gaining 3 places each as a team at the moment? I would say no to that. So I would be staying where I am, particularly in the place of Hoffman. Maybe Nolo will fancy his chances a little bit later on and make some of these overtakes here. But certainly in the case of Hoffman, I would be staying where I am, just making sure that Muller can't get anywhere near. But Ryan Barneveld right now is certainly looking like one of the strongest drivers in this field. He had a real big fight for that win in the third heat of the heats a little bit earlier on. They possibly saved their strongest driver until last at BS competition just to get them out of trouble. They didn't really need him in the end, but he did perform for them. I've noticed as well the 2 ART cars have been really chewing through push to passes. Barneveld has been a lot more cautious with them.
Yeah, I was going to say it is looking like a Christmas tree at the moment, being lit up. The top 2, Half and Berryman, using the push to pass to essentially keep Barneveld at bay at the moment. Again, Half on the button, Barneveld's now on the button. Peter Berryman is not, though, and this could be a move down into T5. There's Berryman responding just a little bit. Barneveld's going to look to the outside, picks up the slipstream of Johan Half. Is going to commit to the outside, down into T5. It's a long corner here, though, at the 90 degrees. Not able to get through. A little bit of contact. He's pushed off, and watch out for Dominic Hoffman, who's going to come through as they rise their way up the hill. Muller as well is going to look for the Koana gaming car, and that is one that does need to make some positions up. Big moment for Ryan Barneveld as we head into 7.
Well, yeah, with that position there, surely Koana now are going to be in position to take this, although they're still tied as Barneveld there struggling massively. I really do think, though, that Berryman was a little bit out of order for just shoving him quite so far wide through that turn 5. We'll probably have to see it again to get a better view as to really what happened. However, I do think Berryman just kind of ran him out of road, really.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure Race Control will take a look. That's not her. We don't have to jump on that one. It was a little bit rough. Whether you could argue Ryan Barneveld wasn't fully alongside, that's the kind of big question. Alago, though, he was kind of wondering if he was going to make a move on Muller, and the second he didn't commit, Sven Noller was like, yeah, cool, cheers, thanks, I'll have a little look myself. Doesn't manage to find his way through. Scrivens has got past Lorenz Herzing as well, so up into 9th. So Koana Gaming losing an extra point there as Herzing's coming under pressure from Alan Terzic.
Yeah, and if indeed he would have kept that place, they would have been in that position to go into those semi-finals. Here it is again. Was there enough? Well, I say, it's an awkward one, isn't it? It's not quite as clear-cut as I initially said, I don't think. As meanwhile, side by side, Muller and Alago. Alago goes very wide, and here comes Noller down the inside as well as Jamie Fluke.
Alago's essentially kind of playing a bit for himself, really, in all of this. Big moment, though, on the exit of T3 as it's side by side back here. You've got Jamie Fluke trying to drag it. He picks up the slipstream of Noller as they all move over to the right-hand side of shot, moving down the hill towards turn 5. Alago massively on the button on the penultimate lap of the race. There's the move to the outside from Noller. A little bit of contact as well as that's Muller in a bit too deep. Everyone's in a bit too deep, and Jamie Fluke's trying to have to slot the gap. Big move, though, coming up the order from Dylan Scrivens from Patrick Long Esports.
Dylan Scrivens, what a bit of opportunistic driving that was. He's gained about 4 places there. It was Muller, very late on the brakes down towards turn number 5. Everybody was off the road because of it, and all of a sudden, hell broke loose there. Koana now not in nearly as strong of a position as they were mere seconds ago. They're now scoring 16 points in this race, as opposed to BS Competition, who are only scoring 14. We really need to see some overtakes here late on from Herzing, or indeed Muller, although he surely can't overtake anybody here on this fun lap. He's just got to hold on.
Dominic Hoffman's just got alongside Peter Berryman as we're looking at Scrivens, looking to the inside of Muller. Again, Scrivens is basically just playing for himself right now. His teammate, his highest placed teammate, is Luca D'Amelio in 16th position. So I think we'll be saying goodbye to the Patrick Long Esports cap here in the quarterfinals. But still, Scrivens can put on a bit of a show, can put on something and just show everyone what he is capable of. Let's take a look at a replay here as to what happened and how Scrivens managed to pick up those couple of spots. Watch the side-by-side, watch everyone run deep, and he thinks, well, I can hit my braking zone 5. Thank you very much. He does receive a bit of a whack.
3 places in one there. What great driving that was. It was a bit of a whack, as you say, but he's been able to get through nevertheless. And now Muller is really defending for his life. He really needs Herzing to make a couple of overtakes, particularly that one on Alan Terzic as well. Even though that still would not be enough, he needs to make 2 places on this last lap. Muller defending for his life, though, even still. And Scrivens has got the nice little bit of straight line speed down this straight as well, with a better run out of turn 3. They go side by side into turn 5, which has ended badly before. On this occasion, Scrivens goes for it again as Muller goes far too deep and he loses the place.
He loves it, does. Oh my goodness.
Hoffman.
Oh, Hoffman for Veloce. He's had a bit of a moment. There must have been contact between himself and Berryman. He'll rejoin the race, but he's dropped down outside the top 10. And of course we weren't done with Drama in the quarterfinals.
That might be it. Veloce might have just lost their place in the semi-finals as a result of that. Hoffman still hasn't really got going very well, and they might well be out here in the quarterfinal stage due to this. He did need to make this move on Peter Berryman. He sends it deep through turn 6. He loses it on his own, and he might well have thrown away Veloce's place in the semi-finals.
And he just didn't need to do it. We were speaking about this earlier for Veloce. They just needed to sit there. Hoffman's dropped back to 15th position in all of that. So it's 21 points at the moment for Veloce. We've got to do a lot of math on this. I think it might well go to Koana and to BS Competition. Out of the final corner, though, it's going to be Apex Racing Team once again. And Johan Harth is on top to make it an Apex Racing Team 1-2. They really are strong here at Road America. Harth from Berryman, from Barneveld across the line. A track race to it. And Berryman just beats out Barneveld. Another position gained there from Scrivens and Noller and Muller. It was all super tight across the line, but Muller is in 4th to gain an extra couple of points advantage for the Koana Gaming team.
Yeah, I do believe Veloce are out due to that final lap spin from Hoffman. They will score 21 points. Koana, with that final little position being made up there as well, they'll only score 14, that's lower, and BS Competition will only score 12. So Apex Racing Team have had a nice job of things getting through without trouble, really, but it's the moment for Hoffman to lose out for Veloce. They will be out at the quarterfinal stage. This is what happened to the line, though, in the battle for second.
So close across the line, and there, oh, that is so close for Muller, gaining the position on the line. I think there was thousands between the two of those across the line. Lucas Muller just beating Dylan Scrivens. Absolutely incredible. It was 0.002 of a second at the end of all that for 4th place. But ahead of those, it was Harth, it was Berryman, and it was Barneveld on the podium. Then that tight battle between Muller and Scrivens. Sven Noller in 6th position with Jamie Fluke down to 7th after qualifying in 4th. He didn't have the greatest start to the race. Manuel Largo for the Aspar Esports team will be saying goodbye to them. But with BS Competition in 3rd and 9th, that should be good enough with 12 points. And Koana Gaming with 4th and 10th. Well, we should be seeing those moving on as well. And Túnez and Pinches in 11th and 12th position with Jonathan Alvarez moving up the order just a little bit from the start of the race. Benedict Hitz didn't get a lap onto the board and started from 21st. He moved up into 14th position with Hoffman with that late race mistake. Costly for Veloce. We'll say goodbye to them. Lucas Emilio in 60th position with Lucas Verla. Isaac Gillison, the last car to finish on the lead lap. Robert Puan, after issues early on, will drop down to 9th position. Gregor Schill with that costly mistake at the first corner. Still might see more of him this evening. Alberto Garcia in the final position after that retirement on the first lap of the race. Crazy stuff. It always has to be in the quarterfinals. We'll bring back in Arjuna, and mate, I can't believe what I've just seen from Hoffman.
My poor voice, man. I got this, then I got the jumpy trucks later tonight. I'm not going to be able to speak by the time I get to bed. What a race it was, and all the way to the line. It was drama lap after lap, and it really built up. You joined us for an absolute treat.
I have picked quite a good round to join. I'm very glad about it as well. It's been absolutely fantastic. But yeah, as you say there, you've got to question the logic there of Dominic Hoffman going for that move on the outside. I mean, it was a good move. It looked like it all the way until he stepped on that gas a little bit too early, a little bit too much on the outside curb. To the inside, and it's really unfortunate for Veloce, of course, but yeah, they're going to be knocked out at this stage. A big surprise. Koana once again. I think they made the semi-finals 2 weeks ago as well, so they're in a great run at the moment, despite maybe not being one of those real top teams you'd imagine would make it into the top 6.
It's the universal truth of life. It's going well until it's not, until that moment where things start to fall away. I think as we're standing right now, Apex, BS Plus, Koana, all comfortable, and then I think we're looking at a tie for the first spot out in the quarterfinals. So the points accumulated to the Esports Racing League and on the road to the Esports Racing World Cup. We'll talk about that in a couple of moments' time. But Lewis, your first taste of Road America and these Indy cars in this ERL action, they put on a treat for us. And we always know it gets better as we go through the day. The drivers get more comfortable with the track, with the car, with the setup combination. And by the time we get into the finals, by the time there's just 6 cars left on track, they really pick up the intensity.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things. I mean, we speak about this with a lot of circuits. Is you can look at a track map and think, actually, this track looks easy. I know the IndyCar, I know Road America. The two of them together, it shouldn't be too hard. And we always kind of say, do not ever underestimate. If it looks easy, it probably isn't. And that's kind of one of those critical things. And Arjuna, for someone who's got so much experience in this car, that mistake from Hoffman, one of the most experienced drivers on the platform, one of the fastest drivers on the platform, how easy is that to make? Surely it's, I mean, if he makes it, it's probably got to be quite easy.
It's quite easy, especially with this sort of a setup that we're running. Remember, it's fixed for everybody. They're really wrangling the car, especially through the mid part of the corner. A little bit more understeer than maybe they would like, but that's the compromise everyone is dealing with. And we talked about the tire compounds. Everyone's on their red alternate tire. It's a bit softer to start with, will grip up just like it would in Formula One, but it falls off the cliff in a very similar way to the Hypersoft tires that we used to be talking about a long time ago. And when we talk about this track, I think one thing that we don't emphasize enough is, like Lewis mentions, just how difficult it is. You think they're 90-degree corners, you think they're simple, but they're bumpy in the braking zones, they're cambered in, they're off-cambered on occasion as well. They're all very different corners that require some slightly different technique to get the most out of.
Yeah, it does look quite easy when you look at it just on a track map there, as you say. But the other thing about this circuit is not only the curves on the outside that just caught Hoffman out, for example, those curves that he can use up until a point, and then it becomes a bit sour. But you cannot go out very much from the racing surface. It is grass lining this circuit everywhere, proper old school racetrack in that respect. Not one of these modern circuits with tarmac going off everywhere. So these mistakes are being punished all the more throughout these races, and that is a good thing as a spectator. A challenge as a driver, of course, but that's what you've got to live up to in one of these races, and it's so different to what we could have had at Circuit of the Americas, where that is the complete opposite story. You can go literally anywhere there. So this is proper old school racing, if you like, and no mistakes allowed at all, and not many being seen, admittedly.
When we talk as well, right, about that compromise of the two tracks, you have a setup that is required to be good at both of them. And while Circuit of the Americas, you have that twisty start of the lap through the S's, and even the second, third sector, you have the switchback corners before the triple hairpin. Very different to the fast and flowing America's National Park of Speed. So we're moments away from quarterfinal 2 getting underway. Let's talk about the story of the day so far, Lewis, which is utter domination from the Apex Racing team.
Oh, I don't think that's exactly too far to kind of say. It's one of those ones where you kind of like, utter domination is a bit too strong to say. I think in this occasion, no, it isn't. Apex Racing team have been phenomenal today. We won't see them in the next race, though. We'll see potentially their main rivals, but I mean, who that's going to be by the end of the day, we'll have to wait and see. Team Redline will be out in this one. It's going to be a bit of a tricky fight for them. They haven't looked quite as fast as we've seen them before, and that's been one of the storylines so far. They've almost looked a little bit on the back foot. Is that fair to say? Only when it comes to, battling for the victory, but they have looked a little bit slower than normal.
It's one of those days where you might have to be your very best when you have someone like the Apex Racing team standing in front of you. Let's talk as we get ready for this race, a couple of moments away from getting underway. In fact, I think we're ready to get underway. So I'm going to step aside again, watch along with you on YouTube and Twitch live on VCO Esports. We're ready to go for quarterfinal number 2. Lewis and Ewan, take it away.
Well, what a thrilling quarterfinal one. What thrilling heats it has been as well. The starting grid will see Enzo Benito on pole position alongside Kazuki Umeshima. Dominic Blyer in third position with Moreno Sarika in fourth. Andre Martens for Yazheat in fifth position with Jeffrey Rietveld, the second of the Team Redline cars in sixth, making it the only team inside the top 6 with 2 cars. Carbon Sinsport in seventh position with Michael Romanidis for Williams. They've got a bit of a struggle on their hands at the moment. They'll start from 8th, the final 2 cars inside the top 10 being Triton and Yazheat. It's a very colourful top 10 with a lot of different teams up there. In 11th and 12th, we find the 2 Team Fordzilla drivers of Wagner alongside Sean Arnold. Jack Keithley, that's one of the Williams esports drivers, will start from 13th position with Yane Sumicic, Kazuki Umashima's teammate, starting from 14th. Petr Pliška, a couple of positions behind his teammate in 15th with Vegrecki, another one of the Carbon Sim Sports car. Michi Hoyer behind his long teammate, of course, in Jene Simičić down in 17th position before we find the third of the Team Redline drivers, Chris Lullum, who did do a good job to work his way up the order in the first heat. He'll have to do quite a lot in this one. Ryan Barneveld in 9th position, Ross Woodford in 20th before we have the Triton racing car in 21st. And then two of the Team Ballas Esports drivers, 23rd, 24th, behind Plonner for Carbon Sim Sport. It's going to be a tough one, but it does seem as though Redline are starting out Ewan in a strong position at the moment.
They are starting it in a decent position here. But whether they'll be able to convert with that or not remains to be seen, of course. Chris Lullum's quite a long way back, so if the front two have problems, then they haven't really got an insurance policy in this one. I think you are being a bit harsh, though, by saying they're a bit off the pace here today, I've got to be honest, because that's just in relation to Apex Racing Team, to be honest. Compared to everybody else, they're fast as normal, but just ART just stepping things up here today, in my opinion anyway. I think they should cruise through this quarterfinal. Things are going to get a bit more difficult for them at the semis, of course. However, I still think this quarterfinal is going to be theirs. For second and third, I honestly could not tell you, because I think only one team is actually missing having any car inside the top 10. I think we do have 6 teams inside the top 10.
It's a very colourful top 10 indeed. Maybe this will be the team to be when we're on board with Jene Simičić here. Obviously, Umashima starting on the up towards the front of the order, on the front row of the grid. Maybe he can, Jene Simičić can work his way up the order. By Redline, I'm just going to clarify, by the way, by saying that they're off the pace. Remember the last time they went racing in iRacing in ERL and in the ERWC, they dominated this platform. This is their hunting ground. So to see them not only being the second fastest team, but also they're not exactly locking out the front row. They're not exactly looking bulletproof in the quarterfinals. Well, we'll have to wait and see what they could do as we go racing again. Jeffrey Rietveld already with a great start on the outside as they race their way down towards turn 1 again. Umashima's dropping backwards. It's the Triton racing car of the gas trying to get his way up on the run in towards turn 1 as they fight their way through, balancing on the brakes as we ride on board with Andre Martins down the hill towards 2 and 3. It's side by side, up and down the top 10. There's already a bit of drama in the background, plenty of smoke at T1. There has been a lot, and Triton's gone straight on.
I think it might be, it's one of the Williams cars, the two of them off together at turn 3. Triton and Williams have made their life very, very difficult in terms of making it into the semi-finals. We go downhill towards turn 5 though. This is where the chaos can really kick off. Late braking from everybody, including the pair of Yasheet cars there that nearly go spearing into the back of the two in front, but thankfully everybody's getting through here nice and cleanly. It's been a relatively good start, but for those two teams, Triton and Williams, their life is going to be very difficult now.
Oh, a little bit of a squeeze there, running down the hurry downs. The two Yaz heats are going to switch here as well. So there's already been just a little bit of drama in the backpack. There was certainly something. Jack Keithley, by the way, in that bright blue car, trying to attack the rear end of the Fordzilla as they head through the carousel. But Redline's in a comfortable spot. There's a decent little start there from Jeffrey Rietveld trying to work his way up. Yeah,
it's a bit of a mess at the minute, to be honest, with everybody around everywhere else. Fordzilla trying to get up the order as well at the minute, around the outside of Yasheet into Canada corner. Oh, there's a massive crash in the background.
Oh, that's one of the Triton cars. That'll be Nogaj, and Mateusz Nogaj having a bit of an issue coming down towards Canada corner in that 850 as we look at the Fordzilla car under a lot of pressure from Jack Keithley here. This is Sean Arnold, 9th position at the moment. Big moment there from Jack Keithley though. And Jene Simičić, you said it earlier, 3-time Formula Sim Racing World Champion. He is no stranger to open wheelers and already moved himself inside the top 10 to assist his teammate Umashima, who is still in second.
Yeah, Umashima's given them a chance here. We know that it's not the favoured platform of Burst Esport, and especially Jene Simičić and Michi Hoyer as well, but Umashima's giving them a chance, and at the moment Simičić is converting down the inside of Arnold, late on the brakes into turn 3, and he makes the move with a little bit of muscling going on. He's up into 9th, 11 points to Burst Esport. They might have enough as we run.
Yeah, Keithley also trying to get his way past Sean Arnold and all of that to drop Arnold down outside of the top 10 into 11th position. Look who's directly behind him as well. Of course, it's Lullum from Redline trying to work his way up the order. He's a little bit deep though. He's opened up the door for Grecki to get through at 5 and up into 6. And he's got to worry about that carbon car. He might go straight on here, will Lullum. He'll bring it back onto the road just ahead of the Fordzilla driver of Pliška.
Yeah, he just about does that, and it is a poor qualifying from Chris Lullen, by the way. That's why he's so far back here. 18th position in that qualifying session. He's made up 5 places already through the first lap and a half of this race. But quite frankly, I don't think Enzo Benito and Jeffrey Rietveld will really need him. They do look like they've got off to a decent start in this one, although Rietveld is coming under pressure from Michael Romanidis.
Yeah, sorry about, by the way, calling it as Romanidis. It was obviously Moreno Sarica that was having issues on the first lap of the race. Romanidis in 6th position. Jack Keithley in 10th, so it is 16 points. But oh my goodness, never mind. Look at that moment from Vagrecki down the inside of Sean Arnold. That is big drama for Team Fordzilla and the Carbon Sim Sports squad, just trying to make it stick on the inside of Canada corner. And Milos Vagrecki, I think he might be regretting that one.
Nice. I think Carbon Simsport though that's made their life a lot more difficult as well. Looks like he's in 3rd at the moment and doing a good job for them, but there's only so much he can do on his own. He does need help from Plura and Rugrecki, and they're down in 13th and 15th respectively. I think it's going to be Redline, Williams, and then up for grabs really in terms of that final spot. It's very close between Burst and Yas Heat a little bit. I think Burst to just about sneak in to the semi-final as things stand, but still a lot can change, and Romanidis knows that he will need every point at the moment.
I don't know if you saw that moment in pit lane. I'm pretty sure it might have been Mitchie Hoy. It might not have been. There was certainly a moment in the pit lane anyway from one of the cars in the start-finish straight. Jane Simičić loses a position. Speaking of the Burst Esports team, he loses a spot to Jack Keithley and now moves down into 10th position. You can see a lot of push-to-pass being used. Did notice on the previous lap, almost everyone inside the top 10 was using push-to-pass with the exception of Umashima, who's in 2nd spot at the moment. I think he might be saving his push-to-pass for a little bit later on. Here's Jane Simičić behind Jack Keithley. Lullen is ready to pounce behind him.
Yeah, Keithley is back through again, and don't forget Keithley is a Williams Esports driver, if I'm not mistaken. So that will, I know he's not appearing like that, but he is. So that does mean that it's pretty close between everybody up towards the front of the barrel. I do think that Glack in the Triton car there is not going to have the team support to get through, and I think the same is going to be for maybe Romanidis as well. Although I think Keithley is doing enough at the moment. This is where the real battle is in terms of making it coming towards the end of lap 3.
We're riding on board with Simičić right now, applying all the pressure. But the thing is as they're battling, like I say, the top 7 have absolutely disappeared. There's a lot of large gaps on this grid right now, which means that the opportunity for you to gain extra positions kind of falls by the wayside. And that opportunity for late drama in the race also falls. So it's kind of, you're settling into your spots. There is Lullen to the outside, rather, and trying to make his sick. It's Rietveld trying to get past Romanidis and, of course, Glack.
Yeah, he's Romanidis applying the pressure to the both of them as well at the moment. Glack really trying to hold on for Triton. If they've got any hope, then he does need to try and finish in this 4th place. But Rietveld trying to put an end to that right now. Romanidis trying to make his life maybe a little bit more easy. Rietveld on the outside line here. Glack using that push to pass to defend, and Rietveld will just break that little bit early to try and get the over-under, and he might get it here. Out wide for Glack, although there's no room down the inside of turn 6.
Yeah, Burton's just waiting off the rear end. He's clearly seen that there is something going to happen between these 3 right now, especially with how close that was. Bit of a moment there from Romanidis coming through T7 down the hurry downs into 8, late on the brakes, nearly into the rear end of Rietveld, but obviously leaving plenty of space so he doesn't do so. Into the carousel again, Glack, Rietveld, Romanidis and Burton. This 4-car battle for 4th spot, and this is what could open up the opportunities for those behind. Martins is closing in. Keithley's dragging that train as well behind, but it contains Simičić and Lullen. So it is closing up a little bit in this train of 4.
It is, and that's good news for Williams Esports really, who do need the points. As we look at Jeffrey Rietveld trying to make his way through, it's down the inside for Jake Burton, and Romanidis loses out on a place. So Yas Heat trying to make a charge for this one as well. They're very much in contention at the moment. Redline do look like they're going to be going through. Burst Esport as well, but the other positions very much up for grabs.
Yeah, of course, it's 1st and 5th for Redline, so that's 6 points in total. Yas Heat running in 6th and 8th. That will be 14 points, so they're looking decent at the moment. But Williams Esports presently running in 7th and 9th with 16 points. They're also looking comfortable, but do not forget one team in there, which is Burst Esports, 2nd and 11th. That will be 13 points. They would be one of the ones to also move through. Only 3 teams will move through into the semi-finals from this, and at the moment, it would be Redline, Burst and Yas Heat.
Yeah, this is exceptionally close now, especially since Simoncic has lost a place to Chris Lulham down there in that battle for 10th place. Umeshima has to hold on to that place up there at the moment, as Jake Burton is trying to make his way through the field and trying to get Yas Heat into that semi-final after their non-appearance in the RF2 round of the Summer Cup. They're back at it again and looking to make that semi-final stage. There he is in the P6 at the moment. Needs these positions at the moment because 14 points, while it is enough, it's not exactly comfortable for them right now.
Fortunately, have had a couple more dramas. I think that Wagner's had a couple of issues dropping down the order now into 18th spot over this lap. Push to pass being used by Luchak, by Burton, by Romanidis. This is back to Lulham, who is ahead of Simoncic now, trying to find his way past on the Williams Esports driver of Jack Keithley. He's inside the top 10. He's had to work his way up from 18th at the moment, and here comes Lulham. He's closing in. He's going to look to the outside of Canada corner. Should be a big move for him. Williams Esports can ill afford to lose these positions. He is going to send it around the outside as Lulham. He's going to try and make it stick. He's out a little bit wide, kicks up a little bit of the dirt as they head up through Thunder Valley, and Lulham still not able to get past Keithley. He's a wily old fox, as Keithley knows how to race.
He does certainly know how to race. He knows how to keep Chris Lulham behind, at least into Canada corner for the moment. This has all allowed Jone Simoncic to get involved as well. The three of them might well go at it at turn one, but once again, Simoncic preserving that little bit of push to pass. Lulham absolutely not doing that. He'll go to the outside line through turn one, but the overspeed here should be enough. He's clear before the corner even begins.
Super stuff from Lulham, just timed it beautifully, but he's running a little bit too deep into one, and Keithley will fight back as soon as he can. Remember that Keithley was arguably the fastest driver in round one of the season on the rFactor 2 in the touring cars. Obviously, this is his main hunting ground. This is up the order, by the way, for second position. This is Umeshima under pressure from Luchak at the moment as they head down towards 5, and Umeshima is able to hang on, but a little bit too deep. The up and under might work for the Carbon Sim Sports driver, and as we've always kind of said, some of these drivers, they're basically just battling for themselves. The team's not there. They're trying to do their bit, and that's exactly what Luchak's trying to do. He doesn't have to worry about like moving over or not. I don't think Carbon Sim Sports will. He's just looking for his own results.
Ooh. Yeah, he is at the moment. They've got 16 points and they're not completely out of it just yet, Carbon, but he ideally looks like needs this place. Plona needs that one as well, just ahead of Plitska in the Fordzilla car, and then even after that, I don't think they're going to be they're going to be relying on other people, put it that way. So things are really up in the air at the moment, but looks like he's not going to get this one lying down. He's going to try and go to the outside here into Canada corner. Umeshima not using the push to pass to defend on this occasion. Outside line, later braking, and Umeshima knows that that's not a battle he needs to fight.
Yes, indeed. Up through Thunder Valley again, and like you say, Umashima's just sitting comfortably. A bit of a moment there from Luchak as they come into the final corner for the penultimate time. This is on board with Umeshima, and he can see forwards. Has he got any push to pass to use? Is he going to use it? He did save quite a lot in the first portion of the race. Benito's using it just to clear off from everyone else, and the entire top 10 is a Christmas tree as they're all trying to fight over their final positions as the white flags out on the final lap.
Yeah, almost negates the advantage of the push to pass, doesn't it, when there's so many drivers using it all at the moment. It's basically a train down from Glack to Martins, and then from Lulham down to Plona at this stage is all a bit of a train as well right now, so it's a bit hard to see quite what's going on. But Umeshima very cleverly preserved his there down the front straight, and now he's going to use it down the back straight towards 5 to try and make this move. Oh, it's a late defensive move from Luxak, just about legal I suppose, and he holds on to the place.
Yeah, that was pretty aggressive on the defence from Luchak, very reactive. Glack and Rietveld battle it out over 4th position, with Glack, the Triton Racing driver, holding him at bay. Jone Simoncic and Jack Keithley also battling out over 10th and 11th position. Umeshima does not need to really force the issue here. He could do with 2nd position, but it's not an absolute requirement. We'll look at the points after the race, of course, but Umeshima, if there's one thing that he can't do, is he can't risk taking an over or forcing an overtake that will then put them out of the race.
Yeah, absolutely cannot afford that, and that's exactly what we saw with Hoffman. Hate to keep bringing it up, sorry Veloce, but you know, that's exactly what happened last time. And so Umeshima just using a little bit of sense there to stay away, and a few others in the field as well doing the same, just to make sure that they make it to the semi-finals. Looks like certainly going to be Redline, certainly going to be Burst, going to be close behind for the next positions.
Well, out of the final corner, of course it is. It is the MVP. We know how good Enzo Benito is. He ticks off the final corner, races his way towards the line, and by 4 seconds, Enzo Benito dominates the second quarterfinal ahead of Luke Jack, ahead of Umashima, who'll drag their way towards the line. Are there going to be any other position switches? Glack races his way in a Triton racing car up towards the line, and Rietveld is very, very close indeed. He's more so trying to keep the likes of Burton at bay as Romanidis comes across the line just ahead of Martins. Super tight stuff. What's happened to Simičić? He's dropped down to 12th on the run towards the line, and Pliška has worked his way up inside the top 10.
Yeah, he has. It was a battle between Keithley and Simičić, actually, which has put Williams Esports out here at the quarterfinal stage. I think Burst Esports are still going to make it on 15, but Williams, Yas Heat only scored 14 in that one there. Not entirely sure about Carbon, but I think they would have scored maybe more points than that. This is the fight between Simičić and Keithley. It's so deep under brakes from Keithley, they get to connect a little bit, and in the end, it's just actually really good opportunistic driving from Pliška to get himself up a couple of places for Vordzilla. Unfortunately, it will all be in vain because they are out.
Dylan Scrivens, eat your heart out that moment. They're lovely move from Pliška, who's not really accustomed to this platform. He's more of a race room driver, but either way, doing good stuff there. Enzo Benito, though, doing good stuff at the top, leading by 4 seconds and taking a victory for Team Redline. Yet another one of his VCO Esports Racing League career. Carbon Sinsport behind, and Burst Esports on the podium with Kazuki Umashima. Doing a lot better in this, by the way, than he was doing in the Supercars. He was all right in the Supercars, but in this, he is looking very strong at the moment. Jose Glack in 4th position with Jeffrey Rietveld behind in 5th. Then Burton, Romanidis, Martins. Lullen worked his way up 9 positions into 9th spot ahead of Peter Pliška in that 10th position, the final car inside the top 10. Jack Keithley for Williams Esports 11th. We're saying goodbye to Williams despite a very valiant effort in that. Jone Simičić should be moving on for Burst Esports with Plona, Blyer, and then Moreno Sarika after early issues was in the wall on the exit of T3. Mateusz Nogaj as well in 16th spot with Mike Wagner dropping down late in the race, but still the last car on the lead lap. Michi Hoyer with issues throughout the race, drops down to 80th position. It was right on the first lap. And then for Grecki, we saw the issues for Grecki, unfortunately for Carbon Simsport. Sean Arnold in 20th position, retired the race significantly earlier, just ahead of Ross Woodford, who retired 2 laps into the race for Yas Heat. But fairly dramatic, that one. A lot more, I feel a lot more messy, Arjuna, than the first of the quarterfinals. I'll bring you straight back in. What did you make of that one?
Messy's probably the best way to put it. I was watching on, chatting with some of the guys in the community who are really enjoying this IndyCar. Heard directly from Ryan Barneveld saying this is maybe the most fun he's had in a long time here on iRacing in particular. But it's good to see that the adaptability showing through. And we talk about adaptability, and we usually talk about that with Enzo Benito, who seems to be able to carry his speed forward to all the platforms, all the cars. One of the few drivers that we see consistency switching back and forth across of our different platforms. However, today, he seems to be the lead man for Team Redline.
When isn't he really? It's a very common occurrence, it has to be said. He is very strong. We always know this, and Redline will always be there. That is for sure. So they're straight through nicely there, but a few other good performances as well up there, I have to say. Particularly Luke Sack, I was very impressed with in that second quarter final there for Carbon Sinsport. I know that it wasn't enough in the end, even with they actually got penalty points throughout that race, so they made their life exceptionally difficult. They would have missed out by 1 point only if it was to be taken out of the equation. So they really didn't miss out by very much on that occasion, and look forward to seeing them over the next few iRacing events, particularly to see if they can maybe break into the semi-finals there. A few good performances, especially up towards the front during that race, and also Jake Burton, who I'd mentioned as well for Yas Heat, who pulled them into the semi-finals.
All 3 of the Yas Heat drivers clearly have some speed. Staying out of trouble going to be important as we work to the semi-finals. 26 down to 14, now down to 6, and we know that, Lewis, they get more exciting, the races, as we work our way through the evening. The semi-final has got some very strong teams that are going to be lining up. We can confirm Team Redline, Yas Heat, and Burst Esports heading out of quarterfinal 2 to the semi-final. We think it's the Apex Racing team very much comfortably favorites. Team Redline a little bit further back in the pecking order in second, but the reality is that Yas Heat have shown some impressive speed. Burst aren't totally out of the mix. BS Competition, somewhat surprisingly to me, with only 1 iRacing specialist, also seem to have some speed.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to how we had this in round 1. We were on rFactor 2, and we were talking to this about Apex, who, by the way, in Summer Cup are looking so strong. If they can nail ACC, they are looking very good. But Apex have figured out a little bit on that platform. They've found a lot of speed. They finished 3rd on that day. And I kind of wonder if there's a couple of other teams, like you say, BS Competition, who only really have the one iRacing specialist, but if they've managed to work out ways to get the RF2 specialist in Alan Terzic and the ACC specialist in Gregor Schill to really get up to speed even better on this platform. That's the beautiful thing of this competition. That's the learning that we're kind of seeing, is that as we go on, as we move through the rounds, there isn't who's got the best ACC team, who's got the best iRacing. Everyone's just coming together at the top, and it's why these are going to get tighter and tighter and tighter as the years go on.
If you like the little VCO ERL pin that I've got on right now, head over to thekoyostore.com. You can't buy this one just yet. You can buy some other sim racing related pins, and thanks to our friends over there for making all of that possible. Qualifying for the semi-finals will get underway very shortly. From your perspective, Ewan, your first time being here, your first time seeing the transition through the various stages of the competition, what's going through the drivers' minds right now? What are they thinking about? What's really going to be focusing them as they get to the business end of today's action?
Well, it's very confusing, I feel, because a lot of people, or quite a few of these teams, are going to be pretty elated with the fact they've been to the semi-finals, but you've got to calm down very quickly, especially those who have just done the second quarterfinal there. You've got to calm down very quickly and get back into the zone again before going into this one. So it's a very difficult mindset to get into, and not something you see very often in motorsport, really. So that's all unique, and there's going to be a lot going on at the moment. But once again, it's going to be about nailing that qualifying lap time. We saw last time about how short those sessions really are. You do have to be quick, but also you have to do it in one lap as well, which is not easy to do.
We're down to just 18 cars on the track, so hypothetically there should be less chaos, but we know that the intensity will pick up, the need for results is going to pick up. Race control being relatively quiet today, Lewis. I know you were a little bit up in arms as to what we saw a couple of weeks ago, but you must be enjoying this change of pace for race control today.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we had a pretty sizable incident from Tobias Pfeffer, which was dealt with by race control, giving a 6-point penalty, which is the largest we've seen so far. That was kind of dealt with, had a couple of penalties in the heat races. Outside of that, it's been pretty relaxed from race control. I know, obviously, when we looked 2 weeks ago to the rFactor 2 stuff as touring cars, we kind of expect a lot of drama, but there was a lot of drama in the finals, and that's kind of where I still think race control are probably going to have to step in.
Well, we're going to step aside for a couple of moments here. Quarterfinals are in the books. The semis are up next, where 6 will become 2 as we work our way through the VCO Esports Summer Cup for the Esports Racing League. So here we go, semi-final time on iRacing for the Esports Racing League Summer Cup. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, joined by our VCO commentary team, Ewan O'Leary and Lewis McLeod alongside for today. And Lewis, let's talk about the day so far as we wind our way to, at most, 4 races left to go. The heats were entertaining, the quarterfinals were something. We've got semi-finals on the deck for us next.
Yeah, we're focusing on just 2 teams now. 6 will become 2. We'll look at our finals. It's going to be a tight little finish. We can see here our 6 semi-finalists. Apex Racing Team, who have looked strong all day. BS Competition, Koana Gaming, who have been a big surprise today, looking super strong. Team Redline, are they going to go through to the finals again? Yaz Heat and Burst as well. I've got to say, Burst are doing a lot better in this than I thought they would. They're an rFactor 2 specialist team. This is not really their platform. The fact they're in the semis, the fact they're looking this strong, that is very impressive. Being dragged a little bit by Kazuki Yamashima, but still looking good.
Hey, we did see ERL Summer has got a decent amount of pace. I'll point out as well, if Koana Gaming can keep this rich vein of form up, that they are not totally out of the realistic possibilities of making it to the Esports Racing World Cup, despite Ewan having missed the entirety of the Spring Cup.
Yeah, that is very impressive indeed. They had a flying performance in that last race, or the first race, excuse me, of the Summer Cup. So they are in a very rich vein of form indeed. But it's just about time to go for the semi-finals. So I'm going to step away for a few moments' time. It's time to go to Arjuna and Lewis, and it's time for the semi-finals.
So here we go. It's qualifying time once more. The pressure's on. The Apex Racing team have been the ones to beat so far today. Can anyone topple them and stop them from making it through to the finals? We're about to find out. Jamie Fluke, with 20 seconds left on the clock, has got provisional pole, with Benito second. Berryman Hearth making it 3 Apex cars inside the top 2 rows.
This is what I said. I mean, Ewan was disagreeing with me. He was saying, oh, I don't think Redline... no, I think they are struggling. Comparatively for Redline, I think Redline are struggling a bit here. Apex are looking like the comfortable favourites. They've taken up the Redline position right now, and you can see the grids here. It's a lot of Apex up there.
And so here's a look at the starting grid for our one and only semi-final. Jamie Fluke puts it on pole with a 144.167. Less than a tenth back, it will be Luke Crane's favorite human being, Enzo Benito, on the outside of row 1. An Apex lockout, though, of row 2 with Peter Berryman and Johan Hart split by just over 100th of a second. Chris Lullum for Team Redline will start inside of Lucas Muller for Koana Gaming, looking to make impressive inroads in these championships for the pink, white, and black. Ryan Barneveld, Jeffrey Rietfeldt behind them, with Mitchie Hoyer, Gregor Schill making up the rest of the top 10. Andre Martins and Ross Woodford lock out row 6 for Yasit, with Benedict Hitz, Alan Terzic, and Jurne Simoncic. The 15 cars that have set qualifying lap times have a couple more cars rounding out the field. Jake Burden, Kazuki Umashima did not deliver with the pressure on, neither did Lorenz Herzing. So Apex looking good, Redline looking good, but maybe stumbling ever so slightly. What's it going to take to make it somewhat of a surprise in our finals here as we get set for another 12 minutes of racing, Lewis?
Look, you're dealing with 2 very experienced teams, Apex and Redline. Those are the 2 favourites. They're in the positions to move through. If the race finishes as it is, those 2 are moving through into the finals. They will know that they can't afford to trip up over each other. So I would expect those 5 to probably sit so much in position. I don't think Redline know they don't need to win this race. They just need to get their way through. But that might open up the opportunity for those behind. Complacency is the enemy in a race like this, and you cannot afford to underestimate your competition and the aggressiveness of them. That is what is going to maybe shake it up.
I do remember this is 2 minutes longer than the heat races were, and once we get to the final, we'll shorten the races to just 8 minutes. So there's a little bit of variation in these race lengths, a little bit of variation as well, Lewis, and how the drivers will use the push to pass, the 60 to 70 horsepower spurts that they get 10 times through these races.
Yeah, I want to save it, to be honest. I want to save it just a little bit, you know, at least here, you know, in this race, focusing on the semi-finals. I wouldn't want to use it super aggressively, maybe a little bit on the race start, but then kind of just holding fire, waiting for the final couple of laps to make sure that I can secure my position. That is going to be so important in this race.
To say Redline is struggling would be creative storytelling, but it's fair to say that the Apex Racing team are the ones to beat. The semi-finals are locked and loaded in the Esports Racing League Summer Cup. Jamie Fluke up the hill under the NTT bridge as the field in his control. He'll wait and get us underway instantly. Johan Hoth off into the grass, has got to get off of the power. It's a 1 and 2 for the Apex Racing team, 3 and 4 for Team Redline, 3 wide as they funnel themselves inside of the top 5 on the run down to turn 1. Johan Hoth tries to make up for his mistakes deep under the brakes, holds on to the car.
Yeah, Koana Gaming, Lucas Muller was trying to find his way past. There's the big dive to the inside from Ento Benito. Apex Racing Team 1-2, Redline 3-4, Apex 5. One of the Redline cars of Jeffrey Rietfeld is also dropping backwards behind a couple of the BS competition cars.
Jeffrey Rietfeld down to 8th, not so bad. Johan Hoth in 5th, so those third drivers for Redline and Apex not enjoying the best of starts. Down the hill through turn 5. Hoth has a look around the long way on Chris Lullum. As they climb up the hill, they'll back out of it for now, back into the status quo. Bit of bumping there. There comes the Koana Gaming machine. Lucas Muller on the charge.
Yeah, this is looking good for Apex and for Redline right now, but they cannot afford to make any silly mistakes. You've got one of the BS competition cars, Ryan Barneveld, looking just to try and get down the inside of Jeffrey Rietfeld, as we've got side-by-side in between BS Competition and Yaz Heat. That'll be Gregor Schill and Ross Woodford just outside of the top 10.
So through the carousel for the very first time, it's a 7-lap or so race. Apex Racing team have built up an advantage at the front. Peter Berryman trying to break away from Jamie Fluke after taking over the race lead. Enzo Benito trying to keep them honest, already having burned through 3 of his 10 push-to-passes here today, but they are very much the 2 teams that are fighting it out for the right to advance to the finals. Benedict Hitz runs wide through Canada Corner and through Thunder Valley will drop down to 17th spot.
Yes, indeed, to the final corner. It's not looking so great for Koana Gaming. They've had a great day, though. They've got one car still inside the top 10, and who knows what drama we'll see late on. They might just be looking to finish in 3rd, 4th, 5th, something like that in the points to get them some decent points on the board so they can look towards ERWC II and even to do well in the Summer Cup as they head their way through T1 once again. Muller keeping Rietfeld at bay, Barneveld and Hoyer inside the back end of the top 10.
18 cars started, 18 cars still going, at least for the time being. Not that chaotic a start other than Johan Hoth's excursion off into the grass. This is not rallycross Johan, but I'm sure he realized that just as quickly as he could, that there is not much grip once you dip tires off into the grass. The Delara IRA teams. Barneveld deep on the brakes to try and force Rietfeld deep and try the up and under, but Rietveld's wise to that move. Michi Hoyer, the best of the Burst Esports cars for the time being. We did get word, Kazuki Umeshima, the iRacing stalwart, dealing with some back pain here today.
Yeah, which is a bit of a shame. You know, these can be long evenings, and let's be honest, the racing in this is pretty frantic. It's not as if you can sit back and kind of relax yourself into it. When you're racing, you're very stiff, you're very aggressive, because you have to be in a race like this. There is no time to breathe. Unfortunately, sometimes the body does give up just a little bit in all of that. Whilst it is sim racing, whilst it isn't as physical as driving a real car, sometimes the stress is mentally, and even how much you strain your body can still be pretty high.
I thought you were going to say that his back's hurting from carrying that team here today. There was the opportunity.
That would have been good. That would have been an analogy.
You were waiting for that opportunity. Gregor Shields being wide, and he drops now behind Umeshima through Thunder Valley down into 14th. BS competition 8th, 12th, and 14th. Looks like we're going to be waving goodbye to them, but as it stands right now, Apex Racing Team 1-2, Redline 3 and 4. It's the expected favorites who have one hand on a trip through to the finals.
Yeah, we kind of do expect this to be Apex Racing in Redline. That's kind of where we were aiming for at the start of the day. It is looking like that is going to be the form as Terzic gets past Martins in 12th position. But still, this race, 7 laps. We saw already some drama earlier on in the day. Veloce were looking comfortable to move through, and they dropped it out of a mistake completely of their own. Could that happen here? Could Benito maybe try something that opens a door for Apex Racing team to trip up over each other? Hey, anyone remember back to ERWC when we did that final in Okayama, and how Apex kind of cost themselves a little bit there? I think it was Apex anyway that tripped up over themselves.
Yeah, but that was always...
Nakayama's different, really.
Yeah, I was also going to say, it did seem as though Redline had the ultimate pace advantage, whether it was a 10th or 2, which is, you know, minor at this level, but significant enough that Redline were able to control. Slightly different driver lineup. Of course, we say hello to Peter Berryman, No One Bustamante for the Apex Racing team. For Team Redline, Jeffrey Rietveld jumps in when I do believe it would have been Patrick Holtzman as the third driver in that Redline lineup. So plenty has changed, and we're in a car that you would assume does suit the Apex Racing team better. I mentioned this earlier, but the Apex Racing team affiliated with Team I5G, who have won the last 4 iRacing Indianapolis 500s in a row. Most recently, in a one-lap shootout, Christian Steele took it 3 wide on the exit of Turn 2 on that very final lap to take victory in the 2022 iRacing Indy 500. Something's happened to Gregor Schill. The bad day for BS competition goes from bad to worse, and that's an important thing to bring up because even though they're not advancing to the finals, I'll harp on it once more. Points accumulated on the road to the Esports Racing World Cup. They are vital. Gregor Schill not contributing here in the semis.
But I'd still say BS competition at the moment with 8 and 11, I still believe they're going to be good enough to finish this race off and be 3rd overall in this event, which I've got to say is really, really impressive. Again, we've said this before, they've got 1 iRacing specialist in Ryan Barneveld. The fact that Alan Turgeon, who's an rFactor 2 specialist, and Gregor Schill, who's an ACC specialist, have done as well as they have done today and have potentially brought their team into 3rd position, that really does help their cause, not only here in the Summer Cup, but just generally on their march in the towards ERWC II. Martin's back down the inside of Terzic. Those two switched over a lap or 2 ago, and the Azheat driver is back ahead into 11.
Oh, but Terzic on the inside under the Corvette bridge. Now, was there contact or was that just great car control from Andre Martins through the hurry down? That still side by side will give the inside down the hill to Terzic, who will take back 11th. What a great bit of fighting these two are having as they close off the evening's action, at least for them, as the semi-finals gets past the halfway marker. I'll also point out when it comes to BS competition, Ryan Barneveld seems to like some downforce cars. Usually we talk about BS competition, at least on iRacing, in GT3 competition. Usually we're talking about Phil Denez and Reino Talvar, the 2 leaders of the team in a BMW M4 GT3. It's good to see Ryan up there in the thick of things as he's on the back of Rietveld. Muller side by side with the Redline driver.
Yeah, Muller made an absolute mess of that down into Canada corner, and Barneveld's going to try and get past Rietveld here. He's on the outside, not going to work here. I think Rietveld will have the drive off the corner, but it's the slipstream going the way of Barneveld with a little bit of push to pass as well. Watch out, by the way, between Terzic and Martins, because they've got to worry about Umashima and Jerne Simoncic, who are marching onto the scene for Burst as they race their way down towards turn 1.
This is all fairly academic. Redline Apex comfortably through. It's all about that battle for 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th in the day's points. BS competition currently sit 3rd, only 2 points clear of Koana Gaming, on board with Michi Hoyer as he wrestles around this Delara IR18. Something as well that we haven't talked about is the fact that these cars have no power steering, and at the top level of sim racing, when these drivers use direct drive wheels, they're in for a workout here today.
Yeah, exactly. It is a hard car to drive, this one. You are constantly working. It's one of those things they really worked on with this car in iRacing. It did used to just sort of drop completely as there's moments. Oh, what's happened to Umashima and Jerne Simoncic? And of course, Martins as well. They were all battling in 12th position. There's been drama there. Terzic as well. They've all dropped back, and Koana Gaming move up a couple of spots.
So I'm going to do my math, and I think 2 + 2 = 4 there. Some sort of contact involving the Burst Esports and Yassit machines down the hill. Take a look at the VCO Esports replay. It was the Burst Esports car.
No.
Oh, well, that was Koana, yeah, Muller, Koana Gaming, just completely missing the braking zone and plowing through those cars in front.
Yeah, I mean, that was R-rated if ever I've seen it. It was a little bit... Did I say Muller? I did not mean... No, I meant... Was it Lorenz Herzing then?
It might have been.
Because Muller's inside the top... I did a 10. I don't know why I said Muller. That's my bad. Sorry, I'm leaving you on
you're
there.
making a mockery of all of this.
It really is. But Herzing and the hits, it was one of those two. Either way, that was very messy. And that's a lot of cars involved in one person missing the braking zone.
It is indeed. Benito's close on the back of Jamie Fluke into turn 1. 2 laps to go, just over 8 miles left in the semi-final. How hard are they going to be scrapping? There's no seeding or anything in the finals. It's just one-on-one, team v team. Benito looks nice and calm, as he tends to always do, if we're being completely honest. Anytime we take a look at the likes of Enzo Benito or these top sim racers, they look like they are very much around, just cruising around. That is as far away from the reality as you can get. Benito might even have made contact there with Fluke. Where is Lullum in the equation?
Yeah, I mean, Lullum, as much as he's sat in fourth position, he'll want to get by. You know, when we speak of podiums over the evenings for MVP awards, Benito, I mean, every time he races, he's always on the podium, isn't he? He's always taking wins, always, but somewhere in the mix. But yeah, I mean, he won't want to drop the podiums.
Might have lost Lewis McClade there, but
once again.
Oh, there you are. You decided to appear back.
Oh. Well, I mean, I was watching the stream perfectly. I don't know what was happening there, but either way, yeah, Benito and Lullum, whilst they're in comfortable spots, they still want to battle between them.
Most valuable driver. We talked about that a couple of times in the Spring Cup. Haven't talked about it so much here in the Summer Cup. The driver that gets the most podiums across the platforms will be crowned your ERL Most Valuable Driver. This time around, Enzo Benito trying to back up the performance he had in the Spring Cup, where he was your most valuable driver. Although he wasn't the first to podium across the platforms, that was Alex Smoliar in the Esports Racing World Cup. Top 8 all on the button. We crossed the line, white flag in the air.
That's a lot of flashing inside that top 10. Everyone has saved a little bit of push to pass just for this final lap of the race. Berryman still leading from Fluke, Benito, Lullum and Hearth inside that top 5. Of course, it's Apex and Redline looking super strong at the moment. Muller's got a decent gap to Barneveld, but they have to worry about a bit of a drag race towards the line.
So now, burning through some of their penultimate push to passes. 1 left for Berryman, 2 for Fluke and Benito. 1 left for Lullum, with Johan Hearth at the tail end of the train, also with 2 left on his plate. Gonna get one opportunity, you think, to use it out of the carousel on the run into the kink into Canada corner. I think Benito, though, a little bit too far behind. The double toe somewhat gonna help him, but you gotta remember, whatever gear ratio they're running clearly is not allowing them to suck up as much to the back as they'd like to.
Yeah, a little bit of a lock-up as well from Lullum going down into T5, and it's just dropped it back into the clutch of Johan Hearth. They'll be able to keep him at bay, at least in the carousel, but that run towards Canada corner, if Hearth has a lot of push-to-pass waiting stacked up, you might well be able to steal 4th position. First, second and 4th, that would be very healthy for Apex Racing Team heading into the final. Look at the push-to-pass being used.
These are short races, and with 10 usages of the push to pass, you use them as much as you can. You use them as frequently as possible. But through Canada corner for the final time, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 in line. The 2 teams that will do battle in the finals of round 2 of the Esports Racing League Summer Cup. It's all been about Team Redline so far in 2022, but the Apex Racing team look like the team to beat. Peter Berryman, fist in the air, wins in the semi-finals and carries the Apex Racing team into a one-on-one fight in the finals against Team Redline.
Oh, and there was a drag race between Hearth and Lullum. It did go to Hearth on the line by a couple of hundredths of a second, so it is 1st, 2nd and 4th for Apex Racing team. They are on fire around here, but if there is one team that knows how to handle 1v1, it is Team Redline. They have had so many, and they've beaten Apex Racing team in that battle a couple of times already.
We talk about the meta of these races and the series, what you have to do in particular to make these weird formats, these weird racing styles work for you. Team Redline have it dialed in. The Apex Racing team are figuring it out no matter what the platform is, but here on iRacing, they're home. Peter Berryman, Jamie Fluke, 1 and 2 in the semi-finals. Enzo Benito gets another podium on the board in the most valuable driver standings. Johan Hearth, Chris Lullum, 4th and 5th, swapping around at the death. Lucas Muller for Koana Gaming, another impressive performance for them as they make their 2nd appearance in this competition. Ryan Barneveld for BS Competition, 7th, with Jeffrey Belt, Ross Woodford, Mitchie Hoyer completing the top 10. Behind them, Lorenz Herzing, Jake Burden, Alan Terzic, Benedict Hitz, Jerne Simoncic, Kazuki Umeshima, Andre Martins, and Gregor Schill. Provisionally, 1 point splits the teams in the battle for 3rd, where Lewis, Koana Gaming, hold off BS Competition.
And just about, obviously, all down to that late issue for the likes of Alan Terzic after that contact, which Kowana Gaming might be looked at for, might receive a penalty for as well. Race Control will deal with that. Hopefully, though, we can still just get straight on, because if there's one thing that we do know is that the final, those two teams, that's a guarantee. They made no mistakes in that race. That's going to be a nice, tidy one, and quite easy, to be fair. It seemed, at least for those two.
Remember how we started doing these finals in the Esports Racing World Cup and the Spring Cup? Race 1 for the finals was a qualified race. Race 2, a full invert. We changed that up 2 weeks ago, though, and now only the top 4 get inverted in that race 2. And it means that if there's a driver that hasn't had the best start to the race, there's no disincentive for him to try and push hard anymore. There is an incentive, if you like, to try and get as high up the order as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't great to see, obviously, when you're battling over losing, if you like, for that reverse grid race. That wasn't great to see. So having it this way around is a lot better, having just the top 4 being reversed. However, it does mean that if one of the teams can get 3 of their drivers into that top 4 throughout that first race, it does put you in an exceptionally strong position to take it home after only 2 races. That might be what we see today, but who really knows? I mean, on that semi-final, I think that's the most obvious semi-final we've ever watched. I mean, we knew right from the very start that it was going to be Apex Racing Team and Team Redline. To be honest, we probably knew that since the first heat of the day. They have been so far in front of the rest of the field.
Team Redline, a sim racing juggernaut. To learn more about the story of the Apex Racing team, head over to VCO Send It, a print magazine for a digital world. One of our feature stories in the first edition of VCO Send It is a look into the story of the Apex Racing team. Prediction time, guys. We're going to throw all of us under the bus right now. We're going to try and figure out who's going to come out on top here. I'll go first to make things a little bit easier for the two of you. I'm going to say the surprise gets rung up today. Lewis, I think the Apex Racing team get it done.
I think they do get it done as well. I'm going Apex, but I think we are seeing 3 races here. I think that the 2 teams are way too close right now, and Road America is too raceable. I don't know what you think, Ewan.
Well, I'm going to be a bit different then, because it would be boring otherwise. I'm going to go for a 2-0 Apex victory. I know we've not seen anybody other than Redline win one of these formats just yet in the previous 4 times we've done it in the ERL, so you might be thinking, why is there going to be any different result this time around? I just think Apex Racing Team have that little something extra here in this car track combination with the iRacing sim as well. I think that will just give them the edge to take home a 2-0 victory, so we'll see who's right. We could all be wrong.
We're all unanimous, at the very least, the 3 of us, that the Apex Racing team are winning this. We'll see if anyone disagrees with us in our chat. Let us know how you think it's going to go, which team will win, what the score is going to be in this best-of-3 final that we're getting ready for right now. And one dramatic point that we really saw in the Esports Racing World Cup, Lewis, I still distinctly remember this. Qualifying coming to a close. All the sessions before that race had been the flag flies, the checker drops. At the end of time, you get to finish the lap that you're on. That won't be the case, though, in these finals, because of how we have the races set up. Once the clock expires, qualifying is done.
Yeah, like you say, you've got to get your laps done within that time. It's not easy, because it's kind of one of those things that, whilst everyone on iRacing, I mean, all these drivers are very well aware of it, and this is more thinking of it being a noob mistake. That's from my point of view. You kind of get a little bit complacent. You think, hang on, there's 1 minute 50 seconds left on the clock. I've got plenty of time. I'm just going to cruise around. I'm going to get ready for my. Oh wait, we're done. We're moving on, and I'm starting last. Oh good. You do not have much time in this session to get your time onto the board, and we've already seen through the heats, through the quarters, and the semis, drivers failing to get a lap onto the board. I think that's what really cost Burst in the previous race with Kazuki Yumashima not really getting his lap on the board. They could have been 3rd.
If we know it, the teams need to know it as well. So that's one thing to just keep in mind as we get ready for qualifying. Let's talk to you about the day so far, what we've still got left in front of us, because 26 has become 2 to become 1 in at most 3 races time. What a day it's been for the likes of Kowana Gaming, again showing up strong, and in fact tied with BS Competition on points, but the tiebreaker would swing the direction of BS Competition by virtue of the penalty points going the way of Kowana Gaming. So BS Competition will be in 3rd. Burst will be in front of Yassit, also tied on 24 points, because again, penalty points, your first of the tie breakers. Ewan, when you look at the progression that we've been on, the journey that a lot of these drivers have had to go through as well, from a dramatic, hectic heat to then chaos in the quarters and maybe a slightly calmer semi-final, who do you think has surprised you the most positively, apart from the obvious in Kowana Gaming?
Well, yeah, I guess you stole Stolen my point. Koana Gaming definitely is the team that we've all been surprised by and very impressed by in the opening rounds of the Summer Cup. Didn't take part in the Spring Cup, but still have that chance of qualifying for the big event at the end of the year. In terms of who else have really surprised, I guess we've got to hand it to Burst, not being on their favoured platform of rFactor 2, which they really maybe underperformed that ever so slightly last time out, but especially the likes of Michi Hoyer in that semi-final. I know that it was nowhere near enough in the end to take them to the final, but he put in a good performance towards the end there on their less than favoured platform. So we'll see what they can do on ACC in a few weeks' time. Yeah, if you're looking elsewhere than Koana, then it's got to be Burst in terms of a surprise.
I'll say that maybe I'm a little bit shocked at Williams, although when you look at the lineup, it's maybe not surprising, but a team with so much iRacing heritage coming off the double victory at the iRacing 2022 6 Hours of the Glen would have expected a little bit more. Your thoughts, Lewis, a team that you thought you'd see a little bit more from here today?
I mean, again, as you've stolen it there, Williams, yes, they would sell you on. Patrick Long Esports, I reckon they could have got into the semi-finals. But let's be honest, the major one to really look at, Veloce, out in the quarters, they really should have been going into the semis. They really look like essentially the third fastest team. And hey, they might have even been one to challenge Redline for the finals. But that's the nature of this format. It invites drama all the time. I don't think we see as many, with a change of formats in the heats, we don't see as many big dramas in the heats. I know that's obviously crazy to say considering what happened to Unicorns of Love, but this isn't their platform. So I think fair enough. But when you get into the quarters, when you get into the semis, the idea that you cannot make a mistake in a 12-minute race is relentless, and that's what we've seen.
So that's the story of the day so far, but Ewan, we still got some racing to go.
We certainly have surprises so far in the previous rounds, but no surprise to see Apex Racing Team versus Team Redline in the final, which coming up right now. Arjuna and Lewis, take it away.
So here we go. Qualifying for the first race of your finals here at America's National Park of Speed. We've talked about it already, the need for drivers to get up and go as quickly as possible. Solo car qualifying this time around, and we've been talking plenty about the push to pass. Lewis, no push to pass in qualifying.
Yeah, you've got to do the work, which I mean kind of makes sense anyway. Even if it had pushed to pass, you still have to do the work yourself, so fair enough. But it does mean that sometimes you'll be attacking the ones at slightly different speeds than you've been used to in the previous race. You've obviously, the format the way it is, you're through a race, you're into a qualifying, through a race, into a qualifying, it's just constant, and you kind of get into the rhythm of how it is in the race, picking up the slipstream, kind of adapting all the time. That sometimes being able to get yourselves into the qualifying mindset again is actually really tricky.
It's another one of those challenges of this unique racing format that we have for this Esports Racing League as Enzo Benito begins to wind it up for qualifying. All drivers will be qualifying on this red mark alternate tire, the expected choice as they try and get the most speed out of their cars. Plenty of places where things can go wrong for you in qualifying here, though. We've talked about this before, but the old school nature of the track, it's not a parking lot, there's no tarmac runoffs to save you anywhere. It's grass, it's walls, or if you're lucky, gravel to slow your roll into a tire barrier once you've made a crucial mistake. Let's ride around America's National Park of Speed. Let's ride around Road America with Enzo Benito for an onboard lap of the just over 4-mile facility in qualifying trim. Up the hill under the NTT bridge you go to get the lap underway. It's an interesting way to start the lap. It's an interesting way to end a race if you're drag racing someone all the way to that checkered flag. Into turn 1, lots of speed. Spot the 3 cones on the left-hand side to get on the brakes, down a gear or 2, and back onto the power, maximizing the exit. Through turn 2 into turn 3, we'll talk more about that later, but tidy down the hill to get on the power nice and early to sweep the momentum all the way through turn 3. Onto this long back straightaway. Under the Sargento Bridge you go for what is the best of the passing opportunities. Downhill into turn 5. You can get it done on the inside. You can get it done with the switcheroo, but Enzo Benito maximizing the entry and exit to use all of the track width that is on offer. Under the Corvette Bridge, brake nice and early. Use the flat curb on the left-hand side to power your way into the hurry down, where a flat-out kink will bring you down in towards turn 7. Not even a sweat for Benito so far. Again, another down downhill braking zone, this time slightly off camber as you get onto the curb. Benito with a healthy dose of opposite lock to bring it back into control as he sweeps through the carousel. Tentative on the power, almost bringing it back in a V-like formation as you sweep through the exit and down into the kink where it's foot to the floor, flat out on the run into Canada corner. Not so treacherous when you're by yourself. With dirty air, oh, it becomes difficult. Canada corner can be so difficult. Break at the 3 board on the left-hand side where nice and tidily you'll sweep that momentum up towards Bill Mitchell Bend where you have to be very careful to turn in early and not run too wide over a big bump that will get you instantly all sorts of out of shape. Through the final corner, Benito again just rolling the momentum through, getting on the power nice and early, will come up the hill towards the start-finish line with the first lap and only lap in qualifying that he'll get under his belt, a 1:44.276. It's fast enough for pole for now.
Yes, for now being the critical thing. I think Apex have waited a little while for them to get their laps onto the board. You can see it's just Benito, it's just Lullen, but here come the Apex contingent. Peter Berryman up towards the line. It's only a 0.6. He's going to drop back behind the 2 Redlines, and boom, Jamie Fluke goes on the pole. But look at that for Redline, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Really, that means that in the race, the advantage will swing the way of the Redline camp. All of them separated by just 0.6 of a second.
Qualifying has been the comfort spot for Apex so far today, but only Fluke beats the Redline trio. Here's a look at that starting grid with Jamie Fluke a 1:44.026. One of the fastest qualifying laps that we've had as it got down to crunch time. Benito a 1/4 of a second off the pace with Lullum Rietveld right behind him. A 1/2 a second gulf, more than 1/2 a second between Fluke and his nearest teammate in Peter Berryman. Johan Hart will line up at the tail end of this field. Jamie Fluke is going to have to coordinate on this start. We saw what happened with Johan Hart in the semi-final, Lewis, when he got off into the grass. They've got to make sure they execute a little bit better on their run down into turn number 1.
Look, Apex Racing Team have won every single race they've done today with the exception of the 3rd heat where it was Jamie Fluke in that one and he didn't win there. We'll see what he can do in this one. It's going to be a little bit tricky. If there is one thing that I'll guarantee in this, we are going to see some 3 wide either down into T1 or down into T5. I can guarantee that.
Remember as well, new damage model with this car. And I don't like to bring it up, but I bring it up more so that if it does happen, we're aware. Remember what happened during the ISOWC, Lewis. We were following along with the Skowers machine of Isaac Morris down the front straightaway when instantly out of nowhere, he's upside down rolling on the aero screen.
But we don't have Lorenzo Bonda in the commentary booth here.
Yes,
so,
but you say that. I saw the classic sim racing landmine just a couple of weeks ago. It can happen to the best of us. It can happen without any prior warning. It's nothing that the drivers are going to do. But if they end up on their aero screen, the track will well and truly have taken a victim.
We've been safe today, though, so we'll knock on wood and we'll hope for the best on that one, and we'll just hope for a nice, clean race. Well, I will say, we had a lot of drama in the last round of the season at Donington Park in rFactor 2 in the touring cars. I hope that we don't see the same level of drama. I hope we see some great racing between these two and avoiding the requirement of race control to step in. It's one thing that I've said before, that in the finals that we've had here in the ERL and the ERWC almost every single time, race control have at least had to decide one of the final races. You know, of course, it's best of 3. I hope that we don't have to today. And between these 2 teams, kind of feel we won't have to. I think we can rely on just the teams to battle it out.
Well, of all the cars that we've raced so far, none of them have been self-policing in the same way that this Dallara IR18 is. It's got the new damage model for iRacing. You'll see bits of the front and rear wing bodywork go dangling if there's too much contact. They can get some of it repaired. They can't get all of it repaired. So that is something to watch out for. Like I say, self-policing damage model might be our automated race control for today. Ready to go racing then. 6 cars flying their way down into turn 1. Jamie Fluke has got some work to do. And I talk about how Apex needs to work together to try and win this start. Redline will be trying to do the same.
Yeah, it's where I think the 3 wide might actually come from. Berryman and Half on the final row of the grid. I think they will have to work very, very hard to get through, and that's why I think they might need to make a bold move into the first corner, or maybe even into T5.
Remember, the field's in control of your pole position winner. Jamie Fluke will lead them up the hill in towards the start of final round 2 in the ERL Summer Cup. And already there's drama. Johan Haas sees Peter Berryman coming to blows with Chris Lullum. Lullum will slam the door shut on the Frenchman as they work into turn 1. Fluke leads the way. Benito clear behind him. Redline hold on. Fluke and, Berryman and Haas unable to make any headway.
Yeah, that was definitely a bit of a communicated start there between the Apex cars, because that was a big jump from the Apex team at the back. I've got to say it was a little bit naughty potentially from Lullum to have squeezed that hard into the wall, but I guess that's what you're going to do on a race start like this, and we got the 3 wide. It was just very brief.
I want to grab another look at that if we can. It's around the outside. Can Johan Haas really get that done? Will push himself wide on the exit of turn 5 and back up for now, but it was definitely coordinated between Fluke, Haas and Berryman. The contact that we saw between Berryman and Lullum now, does race control decide that is something to watch for? Because as it stands right now, if you do the quick mental math, 1 + 5 for the Apex Racing team equals 6, 2 + 3 for Redline equals 5. It's a penalty point that might change the direction of this race.
I'll say, I think it was a bit naughty from Lullum, but I will also back that up that I'm not sure race control will have to step in, because if you're communicating the start of that and then you're going for basically to jump the start and try and make it alongside, you are going to take a lot of risks. Let's take a look. Boom, went straight away. He's fully alongside.
They just hooked.
Yeah, I think it's race instant.
Agree. I think when you look from up above, this wonderful aerial angle brought to us by ATVO, graphics partners at RaceSpot TV. It's 2 trying to go for 1. It's as simple as that. There's no blame to be placed. Not everything has to be a penalty. Racing incident, I would agree. Berryman peels off to pit road, so clearly he's got some damage on his cars. The pressure now is on Johan Haas to get past not 1, but 2 Redline machines.
And critically, of course, remember that where we've said it before about the race results and how the reverse grid works for the next race. Previously in the VCO Esports Racing League and Esports Racing World Cup, we've had it as all 6 cars get a full reverse. That is not how it works in the Summer Cup. It is just the top 4 that get reversed, which means Redline advantage will turn into Redline advantage. But let's see what Enzo Benito could do. He's on the button right on the rear end of Jamie Fluke.
The outside at turn 5, Fluke will carry the speed nice and tight to the apex. Benito burned and pushed to pass, not able to get the move done there. Jamie Fluke 6 push to passes left. Enzo Benito 5 push to passes left. Johan Haas 8 push to passes yet. Here you can see the sweeping trends in terms of the push to pass usage. Again on board with Enzo Benito on the run into the carousel.
Yeah, let's see. Benito can find a way past. At the moment, he doesn't need to. With Redline being 2nd, 3rd and 4th, he doesn't need to go for anything. But if Johan Haas gets his way up 1 position past Rietveld, well, then it'll be 1st and 4th for Apex Racing. They'll be on 5 points. 2nd and 3rd for Redline, they'll be on 5 points. The countback goes to the position, or penalties, which will then actually, because if they don't have any penalties, it will then go to Jamie Fluke and to Apex Racing Team. So Benito doesn't have to go for it if they all finish the way they are now. But they're probably not going to, because Johan Haas is going to try something. He's got to.
Oh, I got to correct myself. I said that Haas has got to get 2 positions. No, I don't. Never trust. No, he doesn't. Never trust the commentator's math. If Johan Haas got in front of Rietveld, advantage, Apex Racing Team.
Yeah, it's just a one. Never trust the commentator's math. Peter Berryman, by the way, is out of the race. He is retired from it, so he'll be starting the next race from 6th as well. Kind of makes sense. He's not going to waste time staying out on circuit. At least from this angle, he can at least, in a way, spot for the team, guide the team, tell them what Redline are planning, what they're doing, what he's seeing from them at the moment.
They'll have the likes of George Simmons on the pit wall as well to guide them through the next 3 odd laps here. Benito again on the charge. Jamie Fluke defends with his own usage of the push to pass. Run to turn 5 again. Fluke's being consistent in fading to the inside. Benito had a lunge. Fluke saw it coming, covers it off.
That was well driven and well read from Jamie Fluke, seeing what was happening in his moves, keeping his eye on it, not taking his eye off the prize right now. His eyes are really focused on the road ahead. He's now 6/10 clear, but this battle is not done. The 5 of them are right back together again, separated by just 2 seconds as we head into the carousel. Halfway through the race now, we've got 2.5 laps left to go. The advantage on points at the moment is to Redline. It would be 1-0 to their advantage, and they would be starting 1st, 2nd and 3rd if everything finishes as it is.
clarify as well, Race Control not taking any further looks at the race start. So as it stands right now, it's going to be determined out on the track. Johan Harth has got to get past Rietveld. 2 laps to go this time by, but the further back in the draft train you are, the more dirty air you're having to deal with. And even though these Indy cars do have a decent level of aerodynamic performance, Harth does seem to be struggling to stay on the back of Rietveld. The gap holding half a second, 0.6 of a second, as they wind themselves up through the final corner. Lap 4 underway this time across the line.
I think Johan Harth had a bit of a moment into Canada corner. Did hear a little bit of tyre squeak. He did manage to keep it on the road, but he has to burn a push to pass to keep at least in tow of Rietveld. Lulham's going to do a lot here to just help Rietveld. You know, again, it's hard to pass when the car ahead of you is also getting slipstream, and they can coordinate their push to pass features as well, allowing Benito to just attack for the race lead, and the two of them can try and keep Harth at bay as a duo. They're harder to pass as a two.
Yes, but this is a car that Johan Harth has the most experience of in the field. Raced in the 2021 ISOWC and now has a look to the inside on the run down the hill. Rietveld will give him space, but Harth gets onto the power nice and early, squiggling on exit. Johan Harth rockets up to 4th.
Oh, a little bit of a brush as well as they head through 6. Squeezed off the road a little bit there was Jeffrey Rietveld, but I've got to say, I don't think Rietveld was alongside enough to really demand the track position. I know it's sometimes a bit of a rubbish thing to say, and we all know my opinions on that, but I'd have to say I don't think Rietveld was really there to sort of hold on to the gap.
Advantage now to the Apex Racing team, not just in this race, but Harth would be in control of the start for race number 2 with the top 4 invert. Again, all on the push to pass through the kink on the run to Canada corner. White flag coming up next time by Benito, has 4 and a bit miles left to get this done.
I'm sure Race Control will absolutely take a look at that between Harth and Rietveld just to make sure that it was all fair and square, and then we'll have to see what Race Control do believe about that. But you're absolutely right, Apex Racing team are in control right now, which now means, remember how I said that Benito didn't have to make the move? Well, heading on to the final lap of this race, he now needs to make that move. He has got to take over the race victory. White flag out, we're on to the final lap.
Benito has burned through all 10 of his push to passes before even getting to the final lap of the race. Jamie Fluke has 1 in reserve. Lulham has 3. Harth has just burned through another one to get down to 2. There's plenty to play for here. Harth, in fact, might have to look more realwards than in front because he's only 3/10 clear of Jeffrey Rietveld in the battle for 4th. That might be the defining factor of race 1 of the finals here in the ERL Summer Cup. Fluke is clear on the run to turn 5. He'll lead on the run into the second half of the lap.
Yeah, Fluke's looking strong. Benito and Lulham up really close enough to do anything behind, so it really is all about that battle for 4th position. And Harth's wide, and look at this from Rietveld. He's going to get to the outside into T6.
He learned his lesson from a lap ago. Outside, under the Corvette Bridge, not the place that you want to be, but the pressure is on Jeffrey Rietveld, Johan Harth. Both have 1 push to pass left to go, and you can see Lulham is coming to help his teammate out.
And he's got to. It makes so much sense for Lulham to drop back. What have they got to lose right now? They're already going to lose this race, so they might as well drop back and try and cause some sort of catastrophe for Apex Racing team. Johan Harth has so much pressure on his shoulders as they head through the kink at the moment. It is advantage Apex. I don't know what it's going to be when they cross the line.
I like the call from Harth to not burn the push to pass. He's going to try and use it out of the final corner, but they'll make contact on the run into Canada corner. Bit more contact. Harth forces Rietveld wide.
But I don't think there was contact. I don't think there was contact between the two. If there was anything, there might have been a bit of air between the two of them. But I think that was all fair, to be perfectly honest, into Canada corner.
What a final one this has been. Jamie Fluke has been comfortably at the front, absorbing the pressure from behind, but his teammates got the elbows out. Jamie Fluke and Johan Harth team up to take race 1 in these finals. Except now, has there been a change around at the end, or was that just a glitch on the timing screen?
Was there a post-race penalty of some description to Johan Harth? He's gone back up into 4th position, at least on the timing sheets. And there he is. Okay, well, having a bit of drama here.
Yeah, well, if you wanted drama, this is the place to be. We think that the Apex Racing team have won race 1. Race Control will confirm to us. But as it stands right now, with our top 4 invert, Harth will be on pole for race 2 of the finals. Lulham alongside with Benito and Fluke. Row 2 in another 8-minute crazy dash, and we'll bring in Ewan O'Leary to talk about what we've just seen. Ewan, is there anything in your perspective that Race Control will do regarding the Harth and Rietveld drama?
It's very, very difficult to know, of course, whether they should do anything about it or not. I mean, for the first one, did half maybe squeeze Rietveld out wide on the penultimate lap there? It's a maybe. I'm not convinced myself. I'll let them decide, really. I really am not convinced either way at this point. And on the final lap there, it did look a bit more like Rietveld turned into Harp rather than anything else, rather than the Apex driver really pushing the Redline driver out wide at Canada corner. So I can't see them doing anything, in my opinion at least, about the second incident, but the first one for me is the more close one to a penalty, the one up at turn 6. But either way, it was a good race, and it was a situation that Hart never invited himself into. That mistake at turn 5 on the final lap really opened the door for Rietveld once again. He really should have had that to bed a half a lap before that.
Lewis, you and I have seen our fair share of coordinated starts, most significantly I think back to the VRS SCO Sprint Masters, where Coanda was so sneaky about it that we had to add a rule to try and make it a little bit more fair. But it's always going to be chaotic, especially given that the track seems so wide and inviting, but in reality you can't fit more than 3 cars across the start-finish line.
Yeah, it's where, if you're going to coordinate a start like that, you accept that you are running a very big risk, and that is exactly what Apex ran. That's why Berryman was retired from the race, because they took a risk that they felt they needed to. And I get it. It's not a long race, just 5 laps. They need to make any sort of advantage that they can. If there's nothing in the rules against it, then do it. Redline would have known that was going to come. That's why Lullen was kind of sat there with just about a car width, but not really anywhere past that, allowing them to kind of go for it, but just not really.
Race control still working away. We think it's 1-0 to the Apex Racing team. We don't have official confirmation just yet. And I'm looking at this, and we'll get to the rant about corner numbers finally, Ewan, because I've been waiting for this opportunity. There are always some interesting corner names, numbers around the world, but it seems like America's got its fair share of, let's just call it struggles, because apparently there's this turn 2 at Road America, which is down the hill after turn 1, which is basically just a straight, and it goes on. There's many more examples of that.
Certainly are. It is a bend in the road, there's no doubt, and it can lead you to dip a wheel onto the outside in the braking zone and whatever, so maybe you could count it on basis on that, but it is a bit ridiculous. What I find funnier though is the fact they call the right hand little bent in the road at turn 4 when there's a sharper one just down the road that they don't call turn 4. It's very similar, so I don't know, it's amusing, but it's stuff that only commentators really notice. The people at home probably not really asked, to be honest.
That does make us very angry, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, I know. It does.
It does get us. It does get us going. And I think are we agreed now, Lewis, that Red Bull Ring turn 2 is turn 2?
Reluctantly, yes.
Just because of motorcycles. Well, although now it's not really a factor because they've got their own chicane.
They've got a chicane now. Yeah. No. I mean, it isn't. But this is the whole thing. Is like the only thing that I ask for is if there are any track designers sitting here watching, if you're going to make a circuit and then number your corners, number them consistently.
Talk to commentators.
Just number them consistently. If you're gonna give like this a corner, then if you have it later on in the lap, give it another corner number. Don't just go whatever.
So the question I have now, is it worse to have the fake corner like turn 2 at Road America, or is it worse to have turn 7A, B, C?
No, unacceptable. do not have 7A, B, C. Absolutely unacceptable.
Neither are good.
Well,
who's thought numbering corners are difficult?
It's been fun so far. We may be done after another 8 minutes of racing action.
We could well be. We're going into the second leg now of this final. Are we going to the third and final one, or are we going to see a 2-0? Let's find out. Let's go to the final.
Well, 3 commentators were unanimous. It was going to be the Apex Racing team. We differed, though, on the final end score, but it is now all down to this. Can Team Redline drag it out to a best-of-3 showdown between them and the Apex Racing team? Johan Hart will lead us to the green alongside with Chris Lallem, Enzo Benito, Jamie Fluke, Jeffrey Rietveld, Peter Berryman, the 6 cars ready to go. And if you are the Apex Racing team, Lewis, what have you learned from the start from race number 1? What can you do differently? Because I don't think there's too much more that you can do differently to how you tried to get the advantage on the run into turn 1.
Well, if you're Johan Hart, they can do a little bit. I guarantee they're going to coordinate the start again. Whilst you have to start in line, there's no rule as to how far left or right you have to start. Now, Johan Harth can start all the way over the left-hand side of the circuit and try and like basically make Lulham kind of have to pick. You can't really sit in between it. There'll always be a gap there for Fluke to go into. That's kind of how they're going to have to play it a little bit here and try and coordinate the start that way and try and get the jump. It's not easy though. They are not in an easy spot.
It is going to be a fun little scramble as they fight for track position real estate through into turn one. And again, I'll go to the push to pass, push to defend usage, the way that you ration it out. We've seen a couple of drivers, Enzo Benito in particular, Lewis, very aggressive, burning through them at the start of these races.
Yeah, like I say, I mean, I'd want to save a couple for later on, because whilst you can make all the passes you want at the start of the race, at the end of the race, you'll be a sitting duck. And that's really, really not good when you're trying to battle for a prize such as this, for a title such as this, to win any of the rounds here in the Spring Cup, in the Summer Cup and the Fall Cup, to build your way up into the ERWC. It's all of these wins are even more valuable than even some of the biggest race wins in sim racing. There's so much value to it, and that's why you've got to play it tactically.
Upper hand for for the Apex Racing team as they look to become the first team not named the Unicorns of Love to displace Team Redline from the top of the heap in the Esports Racing League. It's Johan Harth, a lot more controlled on this start, and Jamie Fluke is alongside of Enzo Benito and already getting in front. Is that the crucial move as draft games are played between Redline and the Apex Racing team on the run into turn one? Aggressive on the brakes is Enzo Benito, who get alongside with Chris Lulham. It's Redline 2 and 3. It's still Apex, though, in control.
Yeah, they're looking all right at the moment, but of course Redline playing a little bit of a game. There's contact in the background. What has happened to Peter Berryman? Was that solo? Was that inflicted by Rietveld? Could we be looking at something from race control as we head down towards turn 5?
Peter Berryman has had no luck in these finals as he's looked to try and keep the pressure on. I don't think that's going to be something race control will take a look at, but we'll get a VCO replay in a couple of moments' time. It's reversed inside the top 4 for the time being. Harth finished 4th, but he leads the way right now. Here's a look at that moment down the hill at turn 3, and you'll see just gets onto the grass, gets a wiggle. No chance for Rietveld to respond.
Yeah, that's just how it is. I think that was just a little bit of a mistake from Rietveld. It does mean that we're at a 4-horse race right now, which does mean that realistically now, for Redline, Lulham has to make a move and a half. There is nothing else they can do. They've lost their car behind because Rietveld's dropped off a little bit, and I think might have to come into pit lane damage. Berryman's also back there. Redline have to win this. That's it.
This is where you want a driver like Johan Harth leading the way. Experienced in this car, experience in battles that result in contact. Your 2020 iRacing Rallycross World Champion, he's not afraid to get a little bit dirty if that's what the needs require. 6 minutes left to go, 4 cars fighting at the front. They're sneaking back and forth again like we're in Speedway, Indiana.
Yeah, that was some big weaving from Johan Harth, but it's going to be a lot of push to pass usage for Lulham just to get him onto the rear end of Harth. We've seen that Lulham's put on some great moves today. Of course, in the first heat, he qualified in 7th, ended up in 3rd. In the semi-finals, or quarterfinals rather, he started right down towards the back of the order, still worked his way up inside the top 10, went +9 in that race. He knows how to pass here, and he'll have to do it now.
Lulham's already burnt through half of the push to passes. Harth has 2 additional ones to use, but Lulham with enough speed to send it down the inside, overcommit. Harth with the switcheroo will get the lead back, but you can tell it's not over just yet. Lulham is closing, has got to be mindful of those push to pass numbers.
Yeah, and okay, do the other drivers know how many push to pass the other drivers have?
They can, yes, they can.
So Harth will be, hopefully, in that sense, very aware. If not, I'm sure George Simmons will be aware as to what's going on and be passing on the information to his drivers right now. But it's a tentative moment. Redline desperate. I'm kind of desperate here in the commentary booth, because if Redline don't win this, then Ewan O'Leary's right, and I refuse to accept that reality, because it would be 2-0 Apex.
Even a broken clock is wrong twice a day. Lulham again on the push to pass, still not conserving it. right 2 times, or whatever. I said something. It made some sort of sense. Again on the push to pass, again burning through it. Lullum with 3 to go. This time at the line has got to be mindful. They may have to swap around Lullum and Benito. Benito has not been abusing the push to passes as much. Hearth is feeling that pressure though, you can tell, because he's the one that's pushing his way up the hill with that 60 horsepower spur.
Well, whilst we're making mistakes in the commentary booth, the drivers on screen certainly are not. The top 4 separated by just a second across the line as we start the 3rd lap of this race. Absolutely incredible battle here at the moment, but Hearth, he is soaking up that pressure. Like you say though, he's feeling like he needs to use the push to pass just a little bit to keep Lullum at bay. He can't overuse them though. He needs, like, for example, right now, no need to use one. Save it. Use it later on. Use it when you need it.
Cerebral type of racing that sometimes you get with the Stellara IR18. The push-to-pass system, not a one-to-one with the real world where it's a second-based allotment, but this, it makes things interesting in its own little unique way. Half a lap to go before we get the 2 to go marker in this race. Again, the gap's opened up. Johan Hearth 6/10 clear of Lullum Benito behind. What a story this would be. We've been talking about in the Spring Cup the struggles of the Apex Racing team trying to get to grips with platforms that they've never competed on before. The summer has started off a little bit more impressively. They want to carry that momentum forward as they look to make a charge for the Esports Racing World Cup.
And just remember, in ERL, there are only 2 teams that have ever won. It is only Redline and Unicorns of Love. On rFactor 2 and on iRacing, it is 100% Redline. Apex Racing team are putting a very solid stop to that if they keep this form on. We're halfway through the race now, heading on to 2 laps left to go. And I am so impressed with the speed they've been showing so far in the Summer Cup. Hearth has gone.
Hearth has set sail, 1 second clear. I'm having so much fun that my Apple Watch has just told me that you're in a room with loud noises. That loud noise is me. Benito, Lullum will swap around, 2 to go. They know that they've got to push their way forward. Benito has 6 push to passes left compared to the 3 for Chris Lullum. Lullum will be focused on defense. It's Benito that is going maximum attack.
Yeah, and this is the thing is that because they've already lost a drive from this in Redline, this whole slowing down, this is just because they're overdoing themselves. They're overdoing their speed. They're overdriving the cars right now, and they're dropping back into Jamie Fluke. There's no incentive to try and slow Fluke down because they'll have to slow him down by 40 seconds to get in behind Rietveld, and they'd have to slow down Berryman as well. It would be such an immense feat over 2 laps. That is not what's going on here. It's just they have been pushed to the very limit by Apex Racing team, and I don't know what's going to happen right now. Does Benito, has he saved his tyres enough to go on the attack?
I'm going to say this with tact. Jeffrey Rietveld, definitely one of the sim racing elite. However, when you came to iRacing, did it make more sense to bring in someone like Patrick Koltzman, who has been dependable here in this platform, here in this tournament for Team Redline? Was the gamble to swap around the 3-man lineup the call that has changed the game? Jamie Fluke has to get so far off the throttle that it cancels the push to pass, but still has the drop, still has the speed, will go the long way around through Canada corner, trying to lock home the win here today. Lullum will fend him off for the time being. Fluke's having none of it, still side by side.
Yes, super stuff up towards. Oh no, Fluke's gone around. Don't worry about it too much though, because of course Peter Berryman will come through into 4th position. That was a little bit dicey racing between the 2. I don't know if Lullum was just trying to really force some kind of issue like that, but it doesn't matter because Berryman's there to pick up the pieces.
Now it's about the fight at the front. Benito is closed on Hearth. 4 miles to go. Both locked in. 2 push to passes left to use in this race. The run out of turn 3 is going to be crucial.
Yeah, let's see if Benito can try and get this. If he wins this race, this will be the big deal. This is the deciding factor right now. Are we going to 3 races, or are we going to leave it at 2? Benito's on the attack. He's got the push to pass, and he's charging to the rear end of Hearth.
It's 2 strong characters fighting for honors in the 2nd race of the final. Hearth will pinch to the inside. Whoa! And instantly gets turned by Enzo Benito. A moment of madness. Johan Hearth faultless, but it's Benito that has caused huge drama. Race Control will have something to say about that.
Yeah, with it being first and second for Redline at the moment, it would have to be a very severe penalty to Benito, and I think it really should be, because the only reason that Redline would win this would be courtesy of that, and it was Benito's mistake that caused it. Let's take a look once again. It was Benito was trying to get straight back underneath, and that's exactly what he nearly did. He was only millimeters out, but he went square into the rear end. That's a penalty.
Completely blows past the braking zone. There are some that will argue that Hearth is moving under braking, but he's going with the natural progression of the track. It's as simple as that. I'm sorry, Enzo. I'm glad that Luke Crane's not here to witness that, because I can only imagine how disappointed he would be. Fault lies squarely with Enzo Benito for that moment of madness. Chris Lullum will round the final couple of corners to take the victory in final number 2 here on iRacing in the Summer Cup. But the story is behind. The story is in the drama of the battle for the race lead that saw Johan Hearth butchered by Enzo Benito. We now wait for race control to decide if Apex Racing Team are the winners here today.
Yeah, it was a bit disappointing there, a little disappointing end to the race, but with it being first and second, the issue is the penalty's got to be really, really harsh to Benito, because it being first and second, then they actually still score 3 points because Benito was able to keep Berryman at bay. Third and fourth means that it's 7 points for Apex Racing Team, which means that the penalty needs to be 4 points to Redline, which... I mean, if you think of it from a consistency point of view, if you only think about it in the incident itself, is it a 4-point penalty? It's a little bit trickier. When you look at the aftermath and yeah, the context of it, then it kind of has to be a 4-point penalty.
I think the context is what makes this so different compared to the other incidents that we've seen in the finals. When we've seen things, it's not usually at the front, it's usually back, or it involves most of the field. This was just a moment of madness. Redline crossed the line 1 and 2 with the Apex Racing trio behind them. Rietveld down in 6th position. But like I said, we wait for race control to determine if we're going for race 3 or if we're done and dusted. If Ewan O'Leary was right. And let's bring him back in, not to gloat. Be careful, Ewan. We might not invite you back. We want to ask about your thoughts on the moment that's going to have everyone talking about.
Yeah, I think Apex should definitely be given the win. Thanks. No, I'm joking. Honestly, I really don't know. It's so hard to call, isn't it? Because Lewis put it perfectly there. It's about how many penalty points you give in this situation. I mean, I think we're all in agreement relatively about it. You would lay the blame on Enzo Benito in that situation, but how many penalty points would you give for that 2-team Redline? Is it deserving of 4 points or more, which would give it straight away to Apex in a 2-0 win, or will it be 3 or less, in which case we are going to a deciding race? I'm really not sure. I would hate to be one of those stewards at the moment. But other than that, it was a very good race, and it was going to all come down to the battle for the race win and the battle for that point, obviously, to take it to a final race for Redline. So it's a shame to see it end like that, but the decision and the whole event now really lies in the hands of the stewards.
Lewis, it's not what we like to see, but we've said on many an occasion, we're very fortunate that we get to be up here, shout, maybe a little bit too loudly according to my watch, about the racing action, instead of having to be the ones policing everyone and making sure there are standards being met in this racing today.
Yeah, I mean, race control play a pivotal role to make sure that the racing happens fairly. They had to step in a little bit at the last time in Donington Park, to some people's opinions, mine, that maybe they didn't step in enough. Whereas as a driver, as spectators and stuff, we all, again, have to respect the opinion of race control. If they've said it's a 2-point penalty, they say it's a 2-point penalty. If they say it's a 4-point penalty, they say it's a 4-point penalty. If they say it's an NFA, they say it's an NFA. You have to accept it. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't just be like, oh well, I'm going to go into the forums later on and tell you what's what. Forums are outdated, mate. Stop using them. Yeah, you
got to Reddit now.
To listen to it and move on. Oh my goodness. Do we have a VCO Reddit?
Oh, that's an idea. VCO Esports subreddit.
Is it a good one though?
No.
Probably not. Probably not. It would end up being like Sim Racing Stewards. I think that's probably the direction that it was going to go. But let's operate on the assumption that we're going to Final 3, because at least as it stands right now, with no word from race control, that's what we're looking at. And now, Ewan, qualifying becomes a factor again. And that's where, if you are the Apex Racing Team, you've got to A, put the incident out of your mind, B, refocus, and C, figure out why Johan Hearth, Peter Berryman, why they were half a second off the speed of qualifying that Jamie Fluke had in the finals.
Yeah, I was going to say they might even be a little bit concerned really about the prospect of qualifying again, because they weren't that strong in qualifying when they went through this whole thing for the first time here in the final. So not entirely sure if they're going to be particularly pleased really to have to go. Obviously they'd rather it was done now, but even with if this was a reverse grid or whatever it would be, if it was a different format, I still think that they'd take that over qualifying again, because that will be lingering in the mind just a little bit. Redlines do seem to be a little bit more consistently able to qualify in this in these races a little bit better. So yeah, we'll see how it goes this time really. But yeah, well, let's see if we even have to do a third race.
Well, you could see from the look in my face that it's come on through. 4 penalty points have come down for Team Redline. It will mean that it's a tie on points, but the Apex Racing team, by virtue of those penalty points, do get hold of the victory here today. They become the 3rd team, other than the Unicorns of Love and Team Redline, to have won in this Esports Racing League / Esports Racing World Cup journey. Congratulations to them. Alex Simpson will be delighted, as will Jamie Fluke, Johan Harth, and Peter Berryman. And before we get the chance to talk to the drivers, to get their emotions about the roller coaster that it's taken to get to this point, I'll bring it back to you, Lewis, and we'll go and look at Okayama. You talked about the drama that we had there on the rundown into the hairpin that leads onto the back straightaway. Today, drama as well. But the speed that they had, the Apex Racing team coming into today's performance really did back up that they were going to be the ones to beat.
For everyone that's joined us in the Esports Racing League stuff, and of course the ERWC back in January, we know that every one of these events is full of drama. They are filled to the brim with drama. They just always will be. It's why we love them. You know, it's why we enjoy them so much. It's great that Apex Racing team have finally got that one over on Redline, and it wasn't a luck win. You know, it wasn't like Redline tripped up over themselves, or there was any major drama that kind of allowed them to sneak a victory when maybe they shouldn't have, you know, like how they were actually quite close at Okayama. This one has been 100% them. They have looked the fastest team all day, and they are very, very deserving victors.
And Ewan, to come to you for a second, I mean, after starting off the Spring Cup and on such a back foot, it was always going to be difficult as they got ready to go for the Summer Cup to be thinking about qualifications for the Esports Racing World Cup, and we still got a long way to go before then. We've got 2 more events left in the Summer Cup, then 4 events in the Fall Cup, but finally there seems like there's some momentum for the Apex Racing team.
Yeah, they got off to, as you say, a really bad start in the Esports Racing League. Didn't even make the Masters in the Spring Cup, which is a real surprise, really. Don't forget to be in the Masters. You've got to be in the top 12, by the way. And they didn't even make that in the Spring Cup. So they've got off to a much better start here. They've got themselves into the top 12 in the overall standings with this performance here today as well, by the way. They'd even dropped outside of the top 12 even after the rFactor 2 event 2 weeks ago. So finally starting to get some momentum together. We'll see how they do on ACC, because obviously not quite as strong maybe on ACC as they are on iRacing, possibly you could argue, but let's wait and see how they do there. But with the form they're in at the moment, yeah, they are going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Well, let's not dawdle. Let's head down to the winner's lane, where we're now standing by one of the nicest people in all of sim racing. It is Jamie Fluke. And Jamie, I mean, it's fair to say to some degree you haven't enjoyed the journey that the Esports Racing League has been all about, but you're back on home turf in a car that you have some experience with. You finally are back on form. Talk to us about the joy of today's result.
It's a great feeling. No, it's a strange way to like eventually pick up the win, because on the road obviously it didn't go that way, but you know, it got decided with shooting decisions in the end. I'll say deservedly so on that one. I feel like some of those incidents were a bit clear cut, but yeah, no, it's good to sort of shake the monkey off the back on this one. We've finally toppled Redline for once in this series, and yeah, very, very pleased. Very, very pleased.
Well, I've got 2 questions, essentially in one, basically, mostly because I'm going to tag it on at the end. You said that finally getting the one over on Team Redline. Is there stuff that you've kind of learned in the previous one-on-ones you've had with the squad that really have sort of elevated you here, as well as obviously being quite strong in the car? And obviously, the final question is, when are we getting those track maps back?
So, I mean, fundamentally, we're the origins of Apex is an open wheel team on iRacing, so that's our bread and butter. Not for me personally. It's been a long time from I've really done any sort of open wheel racing, but Johan and Peter have done exceptionally well in the Delara IR01 World Championship, and both have very strong results, in open wheelers historically as well. So I feel like this car suits us probably better than probably most, even for those who are iRacing specialists, shall we say. So we did feel very confident going into this. We've got good people who know the car inside and out, who could help us out as well. And yeah, so ultimately I think we had enough pace, raw pace this time to get the job done, and yeah, thankfully we got there. And for the track maps, we need to find a way to get that squeezed on. No, I have them in my room. That they are mine. They're personally mine. But yes, if we can get some over my shoulder, either that over that side or for a different camera on that side, then sure, yeah, we'll get it sorted.
Deal.
Congratulations, Jamie. I will put the offer out if Alex Simpson is behind you debriefing. Do let him know that we're happy to chat with him. He should just steal your place here. But for now, we'll dial on over to your teammate in the form of Johan Harth, who joins us now. The Frenchman, well, that would have been a rather interesting way to finish off Final 2. Johan, talk to us about your perspective on that incident, fighting hard and getting run into from behind.
Yeah, well, as you said, a rather interesting way to win. Yeah, we didn't know. We waited for like 4 or 5 minutes until the final decision from the steward. I would have liked to win it on track, but well, we'll take it. It's a win in ERL, so it's good for us.
Is it a bit deflating in a way to win that way when you were so strong all day, or do you still just kind of look back to how you were through the heats, through the quarters, through the semis, where you were absolutely bulletproof and understand in the finals it wasn't your mistake, you still were all driving brilliantly?
Yeah, it feels a bit weird, to be honest. I kind of would have liked to win it on track rather than with penalties. I'm not a huge fan of it, so yeah, rather would have won it on track. Would have been much better. We've been strong all day, so I feel like we sort of deserved it, but yeah, it would have been a lot better to just have a fair and clean fight with the Redline guys, because it's always good fun to fight with them.
Well, great to chat with Johan Harth. We'll chat now to his teammate Peter Berryman, who had a quiet final, maybe not as involved as he would have liked. But Peter, of course, your first time in this format, your first time experience the Esports Racing League. How much fun did you have? How much fun was it being on iRacing in this IndyCar, fighting against the best of the sim racing universe?
Yeah, it was good to be involved. Obviously, I've seen the races. Obviously, my teammates were involved quite a bit. Once the IndyCar was announced, I was sort of desperate to get away from the GT side of things. So yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a while. Obviously, I've got a lot of single-seater experience, but nothing in this car. So yeah, I should firstly give a shout out to Brandon Trino, because obviously, I'm sure you know him a lot. Obviously, bit of an IndyCar specialist. Yeah, so he came in pretty clutch for us the night before this started. So he gave us a few tips and tricks, and yeah, I think he made a big difference for us today. So yeah, kudos to him.
What's the highlight been for your debut here? The heats, the quarters, the semis, and the finals. They all provide like a different style of racing. What have you enjoyed the most?
Personally, definitely the heats and the quarters and semis were good for me. I think I dropped off quite a bit in the final. I'm not afraid to say I was pretty useless in the final there. So having to rely on my teammates to get the work done, I think fatigue just set in a bit. So. But yeah, I really enjoyed just being at the front for a change. It's been a while, so yeah, it feels good.
Peter Berryman, one final question for you, Pete, before we let you go. I'm glad that you've got some pants on today when I'm talking to you.
Yes.
But I saw that you're going to be doing some karting coming up in the real world. Talk to us about your plans for 2022.
Yeah, so there's a few of us. There's 4 of us in the team who are actually doing it. So we've got myself, Kevin Ellis Jr., who a lot of you guys will know. We've got Daniel McCauley and Mark Tranter. So there's 4 of us that are taking part in the BIKC, so the British Indoor Karting Championship. And most of us are pretty new to the karting scene. So we thought we'd just, give it a crack for a bit of fun and get involved in that. Hopefully you guys will see a bit more of that to come in a few months' time. So I'd say keep tuned for that.
We'll be staying involved on the Apex social medias. Congratulations on the result here today, Peter. Can't wait to see you soon.
Thanks very much, guys. Have a good one.
Unfortunately not going to be joined by the one and only Alex Simpson, who is watching from home, and I quote him to make sure I'm not getting any trouble, doing his best Christian Horner impersonation on the sofa. I wonder how his floor is doing with all of that tapping. So we're done. We're done with the action. Ewan, first time joining us for this party. Remember, your invite has yet to be mailed out for future events. How much have you enjoyed this first crack at the Esports Racing League?
No, I have really enjoyed it. It's been absolutely fantastic to be here once again. Once again, for the first time, I should say, for the ERL. Yeah, great racing all day long, starting in the heats, obviously going towards the final. It is a shame to see the finals end the way they did, I suppose, with a steward's decision rather than anything on track, which we obviously would have liked to see. But nothing's perfect after all, and we've had a pretty nice day of racing. So absolutely can't complain at all. Great combination of car and track selected, partly by the viewers, of course, and yeah, I'm sure it'll be more entertainment coming up for the third and final round.
And even though there was drama, at the end of the day, Lewis, deserving winners in the form of the Apex Racing team.
Yeah, they've looked absolutely superb. They've come on strong. They've looked so good in the Summer Cup. That's the one thing that we cannot forget when it comes to the overall standings. They'll be locked now on the same points as Redline heading into ACC, which is really, considering that they've found their footing on rFactor 2, I actually wouldn't be surprised to see if they found their footing on ACC as well. They're learning so quickly, and the Summer Cup, it seems to be coming up Apex at the moment.
They were very good in the Toyota Corolla on rFactor 2. At the very least, they're keeping themselves in mathematical chances of making it to the Masters, where again, valuable points are on the line on the road to the Esports Racing World Cup. Round 2 of the Summer Cup is now in the books. This was the pattern of the day, where we started with those 3 great heat races, then some frantic quarterfinals, some hectic semifinals, and then the craziness that is the best of 3 finals. It seems to be a trend, though, only requiring 2 of the 3 finals to determine a winner. Today, it was the Apex Racing team. We mentioned the most valuable driver. Well, is there any surprise about who sits at the top? Well and truly clear of the rest of the field. Enzo Benito is a man on form. No matter what car, what platform, what track you put him in, he's going to be fast. He's going to be near the front. We saw that here today. But while the Summer Cup has got one more round to go, do remember, plenty of esports action here on VCO Esports every single day. Precision Racing League action brought to you by RaceSpot TV, and VCO is live on the VCO Twitch, so do make sure to get involved with us and follow along with all the great racing action. We'll be back the same time, the same place, here on VCO Esports 2 weeks from now for the conclusion of the Summer Cup as we head to Assetto Corsa Competizione and the Porsche 992 Generation Cup car. Enjoy and get involved with us on social media. Let us know where you want us to race as we get set to close out the summer in style. For now, though, it is time to bid you farewell. On behalf of the team at VCO Esports, P1 Gaming, and the SimGrid, behind the scenes doing all their work for RaceSpot TV, Hugo Luis, Mike Yao, and my co-commentators, Ewan O'Leary and Lewis McLean. My name is Arjuna Kenkipati, signing off for now, where we've got a new winner in the Esports Racing League. Add the Apex Racing team to the list of history book winners.